Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Can I have a mover and seconder? Coughlin and Hannah. That the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater 2018 budget come to order at 8:30 a.m. All those in favor? Carried. And we are streaming this meeting live, and we're going to have some presentations this morning, and we'll start into the budget process. First of all, is there any disclosure of any pecuniary interest of anyone on council here on any of the matters? Okay, seeing none. And we'll go right into the first presentation. So I invite the NVCA to come forward. And of course, since we are streaming this live, just please introduce yourselves for council and for the home audience.
Thank you, Worship, and members of council. I'm Doug Lougheed, councillor with the town of Innisfil and chair of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and I'm pleased to have with me our new CAO at the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, Doug Hevner, and I think this is the first time that Doug's been to Springwater Council. And our Director of Corporate Services, Cheryl Flanagan, has been here several times probably. So, primarily the presentation before you will be led by Doug. I'll have a few brief words towards the end, and supported by Cheryl if any really detailed questions come up from council. So just turn it over to Doug.
Maybe before we start into it, just to help us as council, obviously we see budgets come from NVCA, and of course the NVCA has had transitional leadership over the last number of years. Maybe Doug would like to just tell us a bit about
Doug
his
L, Doug H.
That's right, yeah, the Doug H to the Doug to the left. A bit of his background and what he's bringing to the MVCA to kind of lead it for the next number of years. Let's leave it at that. I think that might be helpful so council better understands who's running the ship now.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a pleasure to be here, council. My background is coming from a science-based background. I graduated from the Niagara Parks Commission with a horticultural degree, and as well have a landscape design degree from the University of Miami. And when I complete my thesis, I'll have completed a master's in leadership through Royal Roads University in Victoria, British Columbia. Spent a career working throughout the world. I've had a consulting company for 38 years of my life. I've worked in several continents. I've worked all over the United States and Canada. And most recently, spent a decade at the border of North Dakota and Manitoba as the CEO of the International Peace Garden. It's a 4,000-acre property that celebrates the relationships between Canada and the United States. That was a large nonprofit, and I was working with the North Dakota state government, the Manitoba government, the U.S. federal government, and the Canadian government, so I'm quite familiar with the process in that respect. And I spent the last 3 years of my life out in Edmonton as the Director of Parks for the City of Edmonton, and it's a very fast and increasing in size, growth municipality, not like many of the municipalities in our area here that are growing as well. And that's the background I bring to you, Bill. Thank you.
Good, I appreciate that. Okay, let's jump right into it.
All right. Going back, what did I do? Oh, this clicker, okay, sorry. Give me a mouse and I'm ready to go. Okay. All right. The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority started in 1960, and we've been in a partnership with 18 municipalities. And during watershed jurisdiction, our local decision-making and funding partnerships, we work together with 18 municipalities in the area. Our size is 3,700 square kilometers, and here in Springwater, we're working with 543 square kilometers. The big major key feature here, the Minnesota wetlands and the Nottawasaga and Way rivers, and the Matheson, Willow, and Mark Creeks are areas of our jurisdiction that are very important to the watershed. I think we align our growths very well, our common goals very well. Our goals are to protect, enhance, and restore, learn, discover, and connect. And we match up quite well with Springwater's official growth plan, management strategy, and other policies. Just a quick run through some of the things that we've accomplished in our planning department. I think the important thing is that we've worked on 76 Conservation Authority Act approvals. We've done over 27 consents and variances. And we've also acted on solicitors' inquiries, zoning and official plan amendments, non-compliance features, site plans, and importantly, the development of subdivisions in your watershed. We've completed 11 stewardship and forestry projects through our Lands and Stewardship Services Department, as well as done almost $45,000 or over $45,000 in stewardship and forestry work on the land itself. In the watershed, we've planted 4,263 trees, restored over 100 meters of stream bank in its rehabilitation, and we've provided land management on land that we own in the NVCA here of 8,000 acres. Our educational programming works quite effectively in the school system here. We've hosted 6 schools, 13 script groups have come to the Tiffin Center, and that's involved over 724 children attending. At our last board meeting, we discussed a new involvement that we have with Simcoe County school systems, and I think there's opportunities to grow the involvement with Springwater and the NVCA. Our engineering department's been very active in the area. We've issued 8 flood messages. 3 provincial water quality monitoring sites are available. We have 4 base flow monitoring sites, 19 Bethnex monitoring sites, and we're doing groundwater monitoring in the area. As Bill would say, this might be our knitting. I believe at our council meetings he's suggested that we are very active in flood management and water management. Just want to point out that our board meeting, we approved a 4.1% increase for our 2018 draft budget. That was moved forward by our Oro-Medonte member Phil Hall and seconded by Keith White from ESSA. And that's the budget that we're speaking to today. Initially, when we started working on our budget, we were using 2016 numbers. And when we got our 2017 numbers, we saw a significant increase indicated in growth. The first round, we were looking at 7.5%. In the second evaluation, we were looking at 12.1% growth. Essentially, the 4.1% increase shows allows us to cover a shortfall of $89,956 in municipal levy that we would require. That number is actually $153,000, and when we went back through the process of trying to reduce our budget, we came up with 60% of that revenue and reduced that $153,000 number to $89,956. You can see that stated here. These are the nuts and bolts of our request. $104,000 is dedicated to employment and wage costs. That's a 2.3% wage increase. We have a $26,000 increase to, or $26,000 increase to budget of benefits, WSIB at 5%. And the recently passed Bill 148 will directly impact our budget with a $15,000 line item on wages for minimum wage. We do have a lot of contract workers, so that will directly affect us. The rest of our ensuing costs are premiums, property taxes, hydro, and fuel. Just a little talk to our contributions. Provincially, we've received $188,490 in flood contributions, and that's remained static since 1996. So we haven't had any increases to that since that time. If we work based on a 2% COLA, we're spending about $3,500 every year just to continue our business, so that's deducted from our 188. So over that time period, we've basically had a shortfall of about $1.7 million in potential funding that has not come into the NVCA. How do we make your budget grow? We work with, I mentioned earlier, with 18 other municipalities. So we take our $165,000 request and we marry that with the other 18, and that takes us to a total budget of $4.7 million. I want to show a little here. I know it appears through what I've read and my participation in budget deliberations so far that municipalities are very strong partners. They're delivering 47% of our funding, as you can see, the levy funding. Back in those 1996 years, you were producing probably less than half of that, 22 to 24%. So obviously, conservation authorities have come in and asked for more and more and more. One of the things that we have done as a conservation authority, though, is been able to generate revenue. If you look at the contributions, the operational revenues, the revenues generated by the authority, grants written by the authority, and then our provincial contribution, we're actually matching the municipality dollar for dollar. And that's with that static income of $188,000. I've represented federal funding as zero because I want to make sure that council is aware that unless the staff of the NVCA are successful in writing federal grants, we don't get a penny from the federal government in funding. Our gun funding comes from the provincial government and through the RMO, through municipal contributions and the special benefits projects. If you look at the township of Springwater, highlighted here in yellow, you'll see the original levy dollars showing 158, and our 4.1% increase is asking for 165. That's a $6,500 increase to your original budget numbers. I want to look at the NDCA budget here. And this is our capital request. Originally, you went in the first year and paid $3,097. Your year two payment will be $6,196. And I've just outlined for you some of the capital work that we'll be doing here. Important to us this year will be some computer upgrades as well as replacement of some underground floodwater monitoring equipment and some other small repairs. Our total budget is going to be 158.3. That was our 2017 numbers. So it was at the 161 mark. With that $6,500 increase in the capital, that brings our total request to $171,000. Here we look a little bit at CVA, and this is where I would like to bring Chair Lougheed into the game here. I've expressed here the 4.1 increase in levy is actually a 9-cent decrease per $100,000 of CVA. And you can see the historical impact of the CVA as it works through the budget process. It's actually gone down quite considerably from the last 5 years. And right now I'd like to have Chair Doug speak to growth in the municipality, if I could.
Thank you, Doug. As you're aware, Council, in the last, I think, 3 years that the NVCA has been before you, we've touched a little bit on the growth, and this slide before you is part of it. And the slide 2 or 3 before that has the breakdown of all 18 municipalities and their levy costs. If you look at that particular slide that's up there, it kind of shows the growth fluctuation in each of the municipalities. So our budget this year was 4.1%. If the MPAC provided current value assessment to the NVCA, so there's some municipalities that have gone way up. I draw your attention to Bradford, West Gwillimbury, and Shelburne that are over the 10%. So their growth is way more than the average, and there's some that are less. And I know we were discussing a little bit before the council meeting started about MPAC and current value assessment, how there's a little bit of a lag delay before that hits into tax revenue. But anyways, I've just to illustrate that point, and I will admit it's a bit non-scientific, but it's just an illustration of some of the numbers, and I provided that to Renee. I think that each of you have. But it basically takes Springwater's 2017 tax rates. Your lowest tax rate is your residential farm rate, and it analyzes construction values. Presumably a large portion, and not all of the construction values, will translate someday into MPAC assessment. And on the column on the far right is basically how many cents per dollar, or how much percent of that potential new Springwater revenue that the NVCA has received. And I think it's fairly minimal, or well, it's not minimal, but it's 2016, it was less than 1 cent per dollar received. So again, those numbers are relating construction values that Simcoe County has provided us. It relates to the assessment, potential assessment that could be, but it also recognizes, and I do recognize that when you compare a 2014, for example, that might be the construction value of the permits that you've issued that year, but you might not receive that revenue until 2016 or 17. So, but it was just an illustration of growth and that we have. As you're aware, how the municipality collects growth revenue is different than how the NVCA or any other your partner agencies, I believe, would collect growth. For example, you would get that directly in taxation, but the partner agencies basically are on a flat line. We don't get growth revenue unless we ask for it, and our municipalities provide it. So again, admittedly not a perfect scientific comparison, but I think it's an illustration that is worthwhile looking at. So.
That concludes our presentation. If there's any questions.
I'm sure we'll have a few. So, Council, I invite you to put questions forward. Maybe I'll just make a kind of an opening comment on the capital assessment, the separate kind of levy. I just want to remind Council that, you know, we chose to step it in. How many municipalities kind of went all in? But okay, many of them went all in. The reason, just to remind us, the reason we kind of decided to step it in, I think there was kind of a request for more information, and I know they received some time ago a laundry list of what that capital kind of assessment levy would incorporate year by year, and it is quite detailed. I think we may have received part of it, I guess, last year. So, and I still have the same question, and since we have our Chief Financial Officer here, it's kind of interesting. It is brought in as, you know, obviously a capital assessment levy. And I think I mentioned last year, to me, these are not new capital projects. These are continuing repairing. And I know the conservation authorities work a little differently, but I still have the opinion, I'm not sure why this wouldn't have been in the body of your operating budget. Because I know under the Act, if you want to build a new facility, you have to come out and, you know, get approval from all the member municipalities. But this one here, I always thought should be simply part of the ongoing capital or your operating budget in the capital kind of portion of it. Is there any new comments on that? And then I'll ask our kind of Director Schmidt to comment also, because I think that's one of the confusing situations that started last year. And I should qualify. I think we all agree that we need to take care of our infrastructure because there's far too many municipalities and organizations that all of a sudden find themselves in a real problem and have to do a catch-up. So I credit, obviously, Ms. Wood when she was in the interim, recognizing this, kind of getting it into play. And I don't think anybody argues that if we let the capital infrastructure at the NVCA fall apart, it'll be very, very expensive to replace it. So I don't think there's any argument there. It's just the way we're going about it from kind of an operational accounting perspective that concerns me, but maybe speak to it, and then that might perk some questions from council.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to answer your question, when an organization purchases something, whether it's a replacement or not, and it's over a certain threshold of dollars, and the NVCA is at $1,000 set by our auditors, that goes into a capital asset account. So you'll see in the list that I did provide you that the vast majority of it is a replacement of items. So that's purchasing brand new. Even though it's replacing something that's broken, it's purchased brand new. Some of the stuff that was highlighted in yellow, that is still going to maintain in our operational budget. That's primarily due to two things. One, our board asked us to go back to the table after we presented our original asset management plan and determine what could stay in our operational budget and what we absolutely needed the funds for from a capital perspective. The second part is for some of our flood projects, we get that matching dollars of the $188,000 from the province, and so we have to utilize that to cover for our flood department. So a lot of things that are highlighted yellow are from our flood department are also small enough that we think we can incorporate them into our operational budget moving forward.
Your Worship, if I can just add one of the things that it's not in this year's presentation, but it was in last year's presentation, if you recall. One of the things with the capital asset management repair budget is projecting out over 10 years. It was to reduce somewhat the major fluctuations that we would see. So potentially we could have, for example, $100,000 or $150,000 repair issue or that we have to deal with in 2017. That under the previous way of doing things, that would have had to been in the budget. There are some years where repairs are maybe a couple $1,000s in what they're looking at in lifespan. So by stretching it out over the 10-year plan, it was looking to level the playing field and be a bit more consistent in terms of looking at things rather than having to come in with a 10% increase one year just because of one thing, and then a 2% reduction hopefully the next year and that kind of stuff. And I did have that slide. There was that slide there last year that illustrated it.
No, and I don't think we have any issue with that. Again, we have to, obviously manage our assets, and I don't think of any argument with the identified items. And but when I kind of read the legislation, it appeared that if you wanted to do something entirely new, that's when you really went out for kind of all the approvals. Where this, even though I know you've separated it, to me is an all-encompassing operating budget. When we go through ours, we do a capital budget and that, but it all ends up getting incorporated in basically our operating budget at some particular point. And that's fine. So I just bring that up because I think it was Deputy Mayor Allen who's got a lot more experience in kind of finance that kind of brought it up and wanted to kind of see kind of more down to the granular level, and you provided it. So anyway, I'll open the floor to questions. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor French. Thank you for coming today. I know it's not easy to come and ask people for money, and it's not easy to get money from us sometimes. We have a lot of people that want money from us, and it's difficult for us to answer everybody's requests. On that slide there, it shows 4.13 as the percentage of increase. Is that the total increase you're asking for, the 4.13, or is that just for operational costs?
Yes.
Thank you. And through the mayor to Councillor Hanna, that's the operational cost. The asset management is on top of that. And if I might add too briefly, we did have discussion at our board table in regards to some municipalities who started the phase-in process and they wanted to go all in. Councils are going up for elections next year, and so there were some board members who felt that if a council felt they should switch to the all-in. So I'm just putting it out there that if Springwater wanted to, it would be $10,086 instead of the $6,000. But that's completely optional and up to council.
Thank you. And I don't know whether you'll answer this or our finance department, but on the information we have from the township, it shows that there's a 4.1% budget increase, and that's for the general levy, I guess, and then asset management levy is another 3.1, which comes to a total of 7.3%. So am I correct now, believing that you're asking for a 7.3% total budget increase?
Thank you, and through the mayor, again, you are correct. As per the phased-in plan that you approved at, I believe it was the beginning of this year, I think in March, you had chose the phase-in process. So unfortunately, this year, you're going from a $3,000 increase to a $6,000, which does have a big impact in that respect.
If I might weigh in just a little bit, the municipalities that went full in last year, assuming if Springwater was one of those municipalities that had went full in for the capital asset management portion last year, your budget increase would be 4.13% this year, because you would have accommodated that that last year. And that's where all the municipalities that have did it last year, that slide that's up there, the percentage increase ask, if they went full in, that's the ask. If they did not go full in, it was a 4-year phase-in plan, one-third, 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 with the fourth year is kind of a catch-up year of what was lost during the first two, and that's where that extra 3% you're talking about comes from, Councillor Hanna.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, your wage increase, your salary increase is 2.2%, and you said you were basing COLA on 2%?
Thank you, and through the mayor to Councillor Hanna again. We have a cost of living of 1.9%. That's based on the average of the CPI from May until June of this year. June of 2016 to May of 2017. So we just take the average of the Ontario CPI, that's our board-approved way. So that's a 1.9% cost of living increase. The total increase of the 2.3 that you're seeing includes any step increases for our staff, and also includes that $15,000 hit to our budget on the minimum wage.
Thank you, and I know the minimum wage is impacting people. I guess my next question would be to our Director of Finance. Are we basing our COLA on the same, or is ours less than the 2%?
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. Similar process, but ours is at 1.84% is our calculation. So slightly less, but same methodology.
I guess I didn't do the calculations, Doug, but probably if we had went all in, actually it wouldn't have been 4.1, it would have been actually less than that when you add it all in, because I didn't do it, because it would probably be a dip under 4, actually. So we do have to remember that we're the ones that chose to step it in, because I think at the time we weren't totally comfortable with where and how are we using this money for infrastructure. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you. Through Mayor French, thank you for the presentation. So just reviewing the cash flow on an annual basis with respect to the asset management levy increase, can you just run through what it was last year, what it's budgeted at $3,099 this for 2018, and what it will be going forward for, I believe, a 10-year period, and then what might happen thereafter?
Thank you, and through the mayor to Deputy Mayor Allen, I apologize, I just got to pull it up here. So this year, I guess, which is our first year of the asset management plan, because about half of the municipalities ended up phasing in, out of the $129,000 annually that's budgeted for the 10 years, we received approximately $35,000, so the balance was going to come out of reserves. This year, if the same plan goes in where the municipalities who phased in continue to phase in, those municipalities that are all in, stay all in, will actually receive $96,000 this year, so we'll still have to pull some from reserves. What'll happen, though, is that once everybody's phased in and we're catching up, the draw from the reserves will drop, or there might be years where we actually put the money back into reserves. So the cash flow it goes in and out of reserves, but at the end of the 10 years, it'll net zero.
So from a Springwater perspective, with what we chose last year, and assuming we continue that, then what will be our annual amount towards the asset management levy increase this year going forward? And for how many years?
Thank you, and through the mayor to yourself again. If I'm understanding you correctly, you want to know if you were to go all in this year? No, what it is.
Just continuing on what we selected last year, what will be, this year it's $3,099 for 18.
Yep.
Will it be the same amount for what period of time?
I think the way we chose, and while you look for the number, basically there was an option of kind of stepping in 3 years, so this would be our last year of incremental. Because we went, what, 1/3 last year? This year, 2/3?
So thank you,
Yeah.
Your Worship. 2017 is the first year, so that's actually this year. And you went in with the first third, which was 3,000. So next year, you're at just over 6,000. In year 3, you'd be just over 9,000. And then from year 4 going onward, you'd be in and around the 10,500 mark. And that would be going forward. There will be, once everybody is completely phased in, so we're trying to make it fair for those people who did go all in, we'll be reviewing it annually. And we're still doing the review, we're just not making any monetary changes to it. So if we've saved money, then that would drop future contributions, or if we have to spend more money, if new things come on board and the board approves it, it may increase slightly. But what we're doing is trying to keep it as stable as possible.
Follow-up?
So, as I understand that answer then, this year's asset management levy portion is $3,099, is that correct?
3,097, yes.
And so the 2019 at this point would be what?
Through the mayor to yourself, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it would be approximately 9,300, I believe.
And does that, I'm just trying to get a perspective of how this number grows over what period of time?
So through you to the mayor, or through the mayor to yourself again, when the phase-in approach happened, what we did is we took a third of the cost for the first year, 2/3 of the cost is second year, the full amount is for the third year, so the full 3/3, and then the remaining years 4 through 10 are what's called a catch-up. So whatever wasn't paid over those first 2 years are now spread out over years 4 through 10.
And you don't know what that number is going to be at this point?
At this point, yeah, it should be around 10,500. I have looked at it many times. I thought I had the paper with me, but I don't.
So we're looking at 3,099 now, or 97, 4,000 and something in 219, and then it jumps to 9,000 for years 4 to 10?
I'm looking at your slide 16, and this might help. Actually, Director Schmidt's going to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe I'll try to assist. The way I understand it is essentially it's a 3-year phase-in, so approximately 3,100 in 2017, another approximately 3,100 in 2018, approximately another 3,100 in 2019. So you're up to $9,300 roughly. And I think Cheryl was mentioning the catch-up to get the 10.5 would be essentially another $1,200. So my understanding is once we get to 2020, it'll be about 10,500, and then 2020 on, it'll remain at 10.5 unless there has to be a bump up. But it should smooth out come 2020 and stay at the 10.5, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, and of course, it's compounded, like this year, we paid 31. Next year, they're asking 62, give or take. Yes, to pay, yes.
So
Total.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, essentially 2017 was 3,100. Next year, it'll be, or this, in 2018, it's another 3,100 to get to 6,200. In 2019, it'll be another 3,100 to get to 93, and then, or in around there. And then in 2020, I guess to get to 10.5, it'll be roughly another just $1,500 or $1,200, give or take. And then it should smooth out, if I understand. So there shouldn't be an impact annually unless there's a little bit of a bump up each year. But my understanding is it's supposed to smooth out 2020 on and remain at 10.5.
Yeah, I guess, and maybe we'll make sure we're on the same wavelength. Yeah, this year is a 3,100 increase, but the base 31 is still in there, so I'm just saying, actually, I'm talking totals going to MVCA, so 2018, 6,200 would go in that part. No, we're talking the same numbers, so I just want to make sure we're not compounding them. Further questions? Councillor McConkey?
I was just wondering, like, we always seem to get an increase, and I know that it's expenses for operational and that, but do we ever get anything net new initiatives? Like, has there been anything new that you're going to be adding to the programs or to anything that we're paying for? I'd just like to understand that.
Maybe, okay. I guess Cheryl,
It's been discussed, then
Yeah.
don't, it's all right, if everyone else
No,
is
no,
under- I just want top three, like, you don't have to.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor McConkey. We did speak a little bit earlier about to an education component that we are rolling out this year. We did have an agreement with Simcoe County District School Board that went out for renegotiation this year, and we are doing a phenomenal program that's actually about doubling what our education program revenue is going to be. So that's a phenomenal thing that's going to actually impact Springwater quite heavily, because Springwater residents do come to our education program a lot, given the vicinity to our program. In regards to new initiatives, a lot of it comes through grants. So if we have a grant that we're successful for and we are able to go out and do a specific project, that's really where we're able to do. So it's really grant specific.
follow-up?
Are you also allowed to fundraise? Because you're asking quite a bit of money for this asset management, and I'm thinking, is there a particular asset that you could actually put a stake in the ground and do a fundraising event for? Because a lot of nonprofit or different groups do that. So is there an initiative to do that, and is there projections?
Actually, maybe Cheryl, you'll comment, because there has been discussion at the board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor McConkey. There has been significant discussion of this at our board. We are actually looking at bringing back our foundation. That's one of our work plans for next year. One of the big initiatives that we're looking for immediately is a new building or expansion of our current building. We are at capacity. We have approximately 40 staff members in a building that's really meant for about 30 staff members. So we are looking to expand. The cost of that's probably going to be around just over the $1 million mark, if I'm not correct. I am correct? Okay. And we're looking to fundraise for that entire amount through the foundation. So we're bringing it back. We're looking at ways that we can get the foundation to bring in some additional revenues. We're hoping that going forward it will also help with different initiatives. For example, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, their foundation just bought them a really fantastic research boat for Lake Simcoe. So that's the kind of things that we'd be looking forward to once the foundation is up and running and successful. Unfortunately, it does take a few years, so it's not something we're going to be able to do overnight, but that's our goal.
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor McConkey, Cheryl brought up about the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. As you may be aware, that Innisfil, who I represent, has Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority in Ottawasaga. The research vessel is actually quite a good example for the asset management, how it's going to go through. So, for example, last year, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority had an increase in their operational levy last year, and many years before had projected their capital levy as a certain amount, and one of those things in the capital levy was for the new research vessel. When the foundation funded the new research vessel, which was around $300,000, that had the net effect of reducing the capital requirement, such that last year, with the increase in levy and the reduction of the capital levy, our Innisfil, and I'm just talking Innisfil, Innisfil's net contribution was no increase at all because of that. And that's the way we anticipate the asset management is going to look down the road with the establishment of a foundation, and our CAO has mentioned about some of the organizations he's been involved in, that's involved fundraising efforts and stuff like that. So we're hopeful, quote unquote hopeful, that that type of a thing, that we can use the capital foundation, and other revenues to offset some of the operational increases that you would see. I don't know whether that explains what you're looking for, but
Yes, continue.
I totally align with the work that you do. I think you do great work. I think that there's probably more work that we could be doing. We get from our residents, the biggest thing that's coming in now is that we're always funding for the asset for our infrastructure, roads and everything like that. We're going to have a wastewater plant. It's going to be zero phosphorus. It's setting the ministry rules. There's nothing there. But again, when you put something in, and as we build things and they go into the water routes can change, or the infrastructure can start to change. And there's no funding associated to infrastructure for water. And I think that's going to be the next big driver. And I don't know how we're going to get there, but I think that we all have to come together and talk to the governments, the higher governments, about that, and really work with them on that. So thank you for your work. I know it's an increase, and you look at, and you wonder, and I'll sort of look to my mayor, who goes to all of the meetings and understands the discussions going on in that, and he's got more detail on that. But thank you for your efforts.
I think Doug Hefner would like to respond.
Okay. Yes, through the mayor, if I may. One of the things I would like to point out is, you may recall a letter that we sent to your council requesting either your support, your in-kind support, or financial support of an integrated watershed management plan. This somewhat speaks to your question, your concern of how we're going to look at managing that water forward. The climate change information that's been brought forward by the Ontario government is going to impact municipalities moving forward. What we've done is we've stepped forward in looking into the future to develop this integrated watershed plan, and we were successful in getting $168,000 of grant money. So we've taken $42,000 of money, and we've enhanced that, tweaking it to $210,000 of deliverable work. And this is science and data collection that's going to be done by the NVCA that will support municipalities going forward. And if we didn't do the work, the Ontario government would be coming to the municipalities and saying, pony up and pay for this funding. So we're working really diligently as a partner to try to bring new funds into the game. And when you were not here when I talked earlier about our ability to acquire grants, we get zero federal dollars unless we write grants. We actually have staff that do not have a salary component to carry them forward for 12 working months out of the year. They physically have to write grants successfully to even run our programs. So we're working really hard, and our board has really been very strong in coaching us and directing us on how we can move forward. And I do believe that the foundation development will enhance our ability to support our municipalities.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Austin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor French, and thank you for your presentation and for the work that you do for the municipality and the town, or the county. You have given us information about what the dollar amount you want us to increase our giving to you and the percentage, but I want to talk about how that will impact the individual taxpayer. So could we go back to page 17, because I thought there was some interesting 17. There were some interesting statistics there that we didn't. No, okay. Maybe I didn't get the number right, but you were talking about how, for example, if a township's population were to grow, and Doug, you talked about, you got your figures from construction value.
Yes.
So you were talking about some municipalities would experience a decrease. So can we come to that
I don't
slide?
necessarily understand it, but
Okay.
And
It wasn't
this-
that one. No, it
this-
wasn't that. We're talking about the impact on the individual taxpayer.
Is that the sheet that,
No, there we are. That's it, 18, yep. Yes, sorry, I did have the, right. By population, that's it. So if you're indicating in point number 1 that the population of Springwater is going to increase by 4.1%. So, I'm sorry, Mary French, you seem to be not agreeing with me? Like,
no, that's the levy increase.
oh, 4.1 increase. Okay. And that equates to a 37-cent per person increase, or per household or per person?
Through the mayor, it's per person.
Okay, so per household it would be more. What does CVA stand for?
Through the mayor, it's current value assessment.
Okay.
So it's the numbers from MPAC.
All right, so, and you're saying that that is a 9% decrease per $100,000? So could you just explain or flesh that out? Because what we're talking about is kind of two things. And one is, how much the municipality is being asked to give and how much each individual household is being asked to give. And it's sort of different outlook here.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I'd be happy to address this. So every year from the MNRF, which Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, who receives the information from MPAC, we're given a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet tells us the previous year's current value assessment, the current year's current value assessment, which by the way is usually about 2 years behind. And then it also gives us the population numbers, so from the previous year to the current year. So what we've done is we've taken a look at our levy and tried to show you how it could impact in both scenarios. So what we did is we took a look at your population and how it's changed from 1 year to the next, and how our levy impact from the 1 year to the next is changed. So in that case, you're looking at a 37 cent or $3 cents per month per individual within your municipality. Unfortunately, they don't give us household numbers. They just give us straight population. So I can't do it by household. And then the other thing that they do is by current value assessment. And current value assessment is how your contribution to the NVCA is actually apportioned out. The more or higher that your CVA is, the more that you're paying to us. So therefore, that's how where a lot of the municipalities that are fast growing, so their current value assessment is going up quite rapidly. That's where they're the ones that are getting the 5, 6, 10% increases. The ones that may not be growing at all may actually see decreases because everybody else is growing. So that's how some of the negative numbers came in. In the case of Springwater, a 4.1% increase actually is a 9-cent decrease per $100,000 of CVA. So if you look, for example, in 2013's budget where the CVA was $2.5 billion and the levy was $143, that worked out to $5.57 per $100,000. So if you go down to the 2017 where it's 5.32, and then the 2018 where it's $5.23, you can see that that's actually a 9-cent decrease from the previous year's budget when you look at it from a CVA perspective.
Yes, follow-up?
Yes, thank you. So my question will be to the director and assistant director of the finances. Then, am I correct in interpreting from this explanation that even though the township would be paying more to Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, the actual impact on household taxation would be negligible? So when we actually get down to what percentage increase in taxes we're asking for citizens, it will not increase that. Is that a correct interpretation?
Director Schmidt, I know they did it per person, but let's assume for the sake of argument, Director Schmidt, would it be appropriate to say it's probably $1 per taxpayer, if you take that 37 cents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Austin. So we haven't done the calculation as it relates to what's shown here on the slide. What we've done is we've actually taken a look at the increase that they're requesting. So overall, again, I caution members of council and the public when we talk about percentages, because a percentage could be 100% and it could equate to $1. So I would just be cautious about always talking about percentage. In my opinion, you do what you want, but again, percentages don't necessarily always represent what the true dollar value is. So the way that we've calculated, so you may recall that when we presented on November 15th, for an average assessed home at $422,584, essentially what the NVCA is asking for would equate to $1.28 of the $44 that we're asking of an increase. So you may recall the township presented an increase of roughly $44 for the township's portion, or a 3.1% increase. Of that, $1.28 would represent the portion that the MVCA is looking for. Or per 100,000, it's 30 cents.
Good. Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you. The phenomenal education that you're talking about doing. So I think too it's important that is there a partnership with the school board to alleviate some of the fees? Because I think when we read this, we think that this is something that is offered to our residents as incorporated as part of our levy, which it's not. I mean, is it a revenue generator for the NVCA?
Thank you, and through the mayor to Councillor Coghlan. It's a bit of both. The levy is there to support us in creating the programs, having the staff in to do the creation of the programs. And then we also have the revenue generation side of it, which is from the Simcoe District School Board that actually helps pay for the students to come out and have these events. We also have a partnership with some of the local transportation companies to help give discounts to the schools so that they have a less costly bus fee as well.
And thank you. And just maybe for council's information, it's an amazing program that's offered. I've been there quite a few times, but it is an expensive program. So it is, the cost is borne to the parent and the individual that gets the child to go. So it's not like this program is offered as part of the levy. It's not something we're offering to our residents through this. It's still an additional cost to the individual.
Thank you, and through Mayor French to Councillor Coghlan. What I'm referring to in this new initiative with the Simcoe County District School Board is actually where we get to go out and do outreach to the schools. And what this is going to do is allow us to charge much less than having the students come to our facility. It's a 3-time, so they get to see us 3 times. Once the first time is at their school where they start to learn. The second time they come to our facility. And then the third time we go back to the school and we actually help them in their local area there right around their school and teach them about what they have in their little school yard, for example, and how they can improve that natural aspect of that.
Any follow-up? Or okay. Councillor Coghlan, or sorry, Councillor Austin?
Through you, Mayor French, is the program also operated or offered to the Catholic School Board as well as the public?
Cheryl?
Thank you, and through the mayor to yourself. It's at this time it's not, because we have not reached that agreement with the Simcoe County Catholic School Board. Right now, what happened is the Simcoe County District School Board went out for an RFP to all of the associations like ourselves, and we responded with a program like this, and we were successful. So we're hoping that the Catholic School Board is going to see that, and then we'll be able to go out in their next round and be successful as well.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Just a quick question. So my understanding, and maybe the Director of Finance will have to answer this one, but we're locked into the 3.1% increase for the asset management. If we wanted any flexibility, the only place we would have it would be in the general levy, which is a 4.1 request. Is that correct?
Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. I'm not sure that you actually have that room, again, based on legislation. So I think previous CAO, Wood, had mentioned the process that the NVCA could go through. Obviously, the board has approved their budget at 4.1, so if council does not agree with that, there's a process to walk through, and I'll gladly pass that on to the NVCA, but essentially, you're looking at $9,650 is what the total request is. And again, it equates for an average home assessed at 422. You're looking at a $1.28 increase, or 30 cents on every $100,000 assessment.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor French. Did the MVCA board unanimously approve this budget?
Cheryl?
Thank you, and through the mayor to yourself. Our budget, just to clarify, has not been approved yet. They approved the draft budget for circulation, so it's gone out to the municipalities for the legislated 30-day draft comment period. The NVCA does go above and beyond. It provides almost 60 days of comment period, and then our board will actually be debating on it and final approval on December 15th. It's a Friday. That's when the actual budget vote occurs. So once the budget is it either is approved, modified, however, then that's our budget.
Actually, maybe a follow-up on that, Cheryl. I do believe you have a number of confirmations from various councils that have approved your draft, and what approximate number would that represent? More than half of the municipalities? I think that might be helpful guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you are correct. We have received from, I'm just going to do a quick count here. Nine, which is half.
No, I just wanted to mention that. I think further to Councillor Hanna and Director Smith's comment, legislation, once the budget is approved by the board, there's mechanisms that we could say we only want to give you 3.5 or whatever, but they have legislation that they could have us jump through some hoops and force us to pay. It's kind of like our hydro bills. We can say, well, we only want to pay 3 cents a kilowatt hour, but somehow I don't think we'd succeed in that. I have no question. Is there any other questions? I just want to make some final comments because I'm on the board. Okay, seeing none. I have no question about the work that the NVCA does. I think it's had, had some difficulties in the past, long before I was involved with it. It had very good transitional management under Ms. Wood for 4 years. It set a new direction, so everybody was kicking the ball in the same direction, if you want to say that. So I do believe it's going in the right direction. I was disappointed, like the asset management, I think they have to do that. I'm 100% supportive of the asset management program. I have no kind of disagreement with that assessment. I was hoping, because we do have new leadership, and obviously Mr. Hevener kind of gave you his background, his very solid background, certainly endorsed by the board when he was brought on board. But being a transitional year, I was hoping that we'd keep it as close to zero as possible. Obviously not zero, because there's impacts on the kind of operation of it. So I'll just, as a board member, I'll put my board member hat on now. I was not supportive of the budget. The asset plan, no problem. I'm not supportive of the operating budget. But at the end of the day, I'll put my mayor's hat back on. I believe that, it's not a bad budget. There's no criticism there. There's a lot of good questions if you came to the board meeting on the line items, so it wasn't as if it hasn't been vetted. We have a great impact on our watershed because of some of the systems that we have, and we have a great concern, obviously, flooding in on the edge of the menacing wetlands in the George Johnson area, and we're going through our own kind of exercise with drainage and that, and we need a lot of assistance and input from the NVCA, or we'll develop a new lake and be able to sell waterfront property and spring water in the next few years. Plus the impact, as Councillor McConkey mentioned, our concern of the wastewater treatment plant dumping its effluent into the kind of Willow Creek, which is already stressed. So with that, I will support the budget that's been put forward to it. On a personal thing, I will have to kind of hold my nose when I put my hand up, but I will do it because I have no overall criticism what the NVCA is doing. Now, one actually question you may want to answer, maybe off the kind of the some of the comments Councillor Coghlan made. When it comes to educational programs, what percentage of kind of the operation would be available to all residents? Any of the educational programs that do exist, what would be available to the residents free, if you want to put it that their levy effectively would pay for? If maybe that would be helpful.
All of our conservation authority areas in the entire watershed are completely available free, with the exception of parking. We do, in fact, work with homeschool programs that can come in and access our activities. We do programming from them. At our Tiffin site, we have many different groups that come in and utilize the facility. There's active signage and educational components throughout our watershed that people can physically come and read and learn. When people do access our sites, when staff are available, we've really tried to step up that interaction between staff and citizen, and teach and just express what the benefits are of the Conservation Authority. So I think we're working very diligently towards that effect.
And I'm not sure if this is a simple question. If we took the total educational portion of the budget of MVCA, what portion of that is really for programming or education for the general public that effectively, except for parking, is covered under the levy? Is there a number you could choose?
Through the Mayor, if I may, we may have to get back to you with that actual number. I'm sorry, we don't have it with us today.
No, thank you. Okay, with that, just so you know, the resolution basically is approving the request. So can I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Allen, Councillor McConkey. That the presentation from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority regarding the 2018 budget request be received. That the 2018 NVCA operating budget request in the amount of $165,196 representing Springwater's share be approved. All those in favor? Carried. Didn't hold your nose. And so that one is for obviously the operating budget. And so are we drafting a new one, Madam Clerk? So we will do a separate one for the asset management. So you got the mover and seconder? Okay. That the 2018 MVCA asset management levy request in the amount of $6,196 representing Springwater's share be approved. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Worship,
you.
members of council.
Thanks.
Thank you, Worship.
Okay. Moving along here. Does anybody want a quick 5-minute comfort break, or shall we jump right into the severance sound? Okay, Councilor Oss, let's just take a 5-minute recess. Okay, we shall reconvene. And next we have a presentation from Severn Sound Environmental Association. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Julie, and just introduce yourself for the home audience, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'm Julie Cayley. I'm with the Severn Sound Environmental Association. I'm the General Manager. I'm just over a year at the association. So it's been an exciting ride for year one, getting to know our staff and our municipalities and what everybody's needs are. Just a bit about our watershed. We're a 1,000-kilometer squared watershed, southeast portion of Georgian Bay. Pretty unique area, transition between limestone and Precambrian shield, so really fortunate to be in a unique part of the world. And Springwater, as you know, really a key partner. It's apparently we're on an auto move here. Part of the important headwaters of the watershed. So a bit about what we are. Since 2009, the Severn Sound Environmental Association, or SSEA, we've been a joint municipal services board under the Municipal Act. I report to a board that represents our 8 municipal members, and thank you to Councillor Ritchie, your representative on our board. Currently, we have 8 full-time and 2 part-time contract staff. Those part-time contract include our invasive species coordinator and the past executive director, Keith Sherman. We still have on to do our source protection work. We are a source protection authority as well in the area. Our team heads up a variety of activities in partnership with our municipalities, as well as obviously through the MOU and our other partner, the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. Obviously working to sustain environmental quality in the watershed that we all live in. A quick look back in 2017. We're not quite done 2017, but as of the time we were putting this together, the slide here demonstrates the significance of the collaborative value of the partnership in your municipality. Really, it's about the bottom line of your contribution versus what that leverage is in terms of the value of activity, as well as the total value, almost $1 million within our budget. You saw something similar with NVCA, and it's really about being able to double or triple or more the investment that a municipality provides to us. We have several key activities you can see listed here. I'm going to speak to some of the highlights in the next few slides. The team's been very successful as well. In my first year, I've tasked each one of them with looking for finding money on their own. So the projects that they're working on, tasking them with researching grants and doing grant applications as well. And we've been quite successful this year in doing that. We've also worked very hard, heard a lot of feedback from our municipalities when I was out talking to folks about increasing our communication, and so we've done that in particular with our quarterly activity reports, so hoping that you're finding those useful as well. So although a fairly small portion of Springwater is in our watershed, we have a significant amount of activity, specifically around monitoring. Again, you can see from this slide. Everything from stream invertebrates, which both of ourselves and the Conservation Authority, you'll hear us refer to as benthic monitoring. So monitoring the benthic invertebrates in those streams gives us an idea of what stream quality looks like. We're very fortunate to have long-term data sets from the early years in the 90s when we were a remedial action plan. Also significant temperature monitoring, so we use loggers, temperature loggers that do ongoing recording. Sturgeon River and the Upper Wye River, we use those to categorize streams as cold, cool, or warm, which you use as a proxy for fish habitat suitability. We also have provincial water quality monitoring network sites, so those are stream monitoring as well. That's where we look at chemistry. An example of one of our sites would be where the old Hub Motel used to be on the Wye River. And again, we've got about 25 years worth of chemistry data on these rivers, so a very valuable data set to be able to look at changes and trends over time. Also allows us to really look at what it's going to take to protect what we have, both for recreation and the aquatic life potential of our streams. We also do groundwater sampling. So those are obviously groundwater wells. We do that through the Provincial Groundwater Monitoring Network. Some of these wells are quantity only, and some we do for chemistry as well. And new this year, you may be aware there's a well near Elmville. We work in partnership with the Ontario Geological Survey, and that'll help fill some of the gaps in groundwater knowledge within Springwater. I should mention too, similar to some of the discussion with the previous presentation around being able to find other grants, those kind of partnerships with Ontario Geological Survey means that those wells get drilled by that organization, and then we can take them over as groundwater monitoring sites without having to pay for creating the wells in the first place. Another piece of work that happened in 2017, the winter sampling on Orr Lake. Believe it or not, our staff are pretty excited about doing it, getting out there, getting out on the ice, seeing what's happening under the water. Winter sampling, and again, this is part of the agreement with the MOU with NVCA so that we're not duplicating efforts. We did create some new ice safety and sampling protocols, which we share with our townships as well. It's really important to monitor what's going on under the ice, knowing if dissolved oxygen levels, for instance, are staying at a safe level for fish survival. We are looking at finishing the report card this year as well within Orr Lake, the water quality report card. So that should be out hopefully in the spring, and our next summer sampling will be in 2020. A new program for us in 2017, it was a pilot program, Citizen Science. Again, this came about because one of our staff, our water quality scientist, was really enthusiastic about trying to expand our reach and our data and engage the community. So we created this program. Community members get to become volunteer scientists. Real opportunity for folks to gain hands-on experience on sampling and data collection and understanding a bit more about their own watersheds and their own impacts. We created an community environmental monitoring kit. We quickly learned from working with some other organizations so that we would take advantage of their volunteer base and their interest, that it was really about the equipment and the monitoring tools that they may not have. So we help with those. We've created this kit that we can loan out. Certainly doesn't replace our own monitoring programs, it augments them. But we also provide the opportunity to have our science staff work with the data, help interpret it, and help explain what it all means. Our main partner in year one was the Copeland Forest Friends, a really great success. I think what was unique, particularly for our staff in that program, is that all of their volunteers are senior citizens on that particular, on the water quality program, and their lead volunteer was actually 84 and was very difficult for our staff to keep up to in the field. And it's been a really great experience. She brought with her a ton of background, having been a retired science teacher as well. We're also very excited that we won a World Wildlife Fund Canada award, which included a grant towards the program. So really looking forward to a second year in that program as well. We also had year one of another pilot project, our invasive species project, really looking at creating a cross-municipal strategy, recognizing that invasive species don't respect municipal borders as much as we wish they would. We understand Springwater last year had some difficult choices and chose not to participate in 2017. We certainly welcome your participation in 2018. The program focused on the 4 municipalities that partnered in, that being Tay, Tiny, Midland, and Severn. So we really undertook significant mapping of those species, roadways, trails, shorelines, acted as an information source for species of concern. Folks could call in and we could help with identification and could help municipal staff as well with identification. We did some removal projects as well. We would help organize volunteers, help do the removals, and help look for methods that had worked in other areas and try to avoid methods other folks had tried that had not worked. The removals included things like Phragmites, garlic mustard, spotted knapweed, and our plan in 2018 is to expand those removal efforts as well as management efforts, and working again with a cross-municipal working group. And thank you very much. Springwater did have a staff member come and attend our first meeting. We still were looking for some input on what direction to go. We've already started the spring training, as we call it in our organization, and folks have decided in year 2 we're going to move forward with more work with municipal staff on identification and best management practices, and sharing successes and things that may or may not have worked in other municipalities. So really looking at education, providing signage, helping education within the community, and inclusion within this municipal invasive species working group, reporting sightings, and making sure that we work with municipal staff to do what is going to be required within each individual municipality. So in terms of our 2018 SSEA budget request, you can see it's detailed here on the slides as well, obviously in your notes. Our total ask, including the invasive species program, is $50,634. Our core budget, our core municipal funding that we're asking for is $43,634. And that's what we do the base of our work with. The invasive species coordinator and pilot project year 2 would be $7,000 ask, as it was in 2017 as well. And really this would all keep the programs going: stewardship projects, tree distribution, reporting, and more work on Orr Lake on water quality, continuing with some of the temperature work that we do and the monitoring in streams, and habitats and invertebrate programs as well. Staff did ask me to mention within the tree distribution program, really for us, we appreciate very much it's a zero cost other than in-kind time from our municipalities. And it's where we basically mass buy trees so that they're available to folks at a reduced cost, and they can order seedlings through us. But we also do look for volunteer tree plant sites. And staff had asked if I could just put the word out that we are looking for sites for this coming year. So if there are any within our watershed that you know of where folks would want to do fairly large tree plantings, we would certainly welcome that opportunity. Just give us a shout in our office. So for 2018, we're going to obviously continue with our core business in Springwater. Everything from our habitat and natural heritage assessments, stream and groundwater monitoring and reporting, continuing to work with NVCA, our other partner within the MOU. And moving forward, we have some new activities. We're looking to have our strategic plan updated. It certainly has been great working again with our municipalities, and thank you to your staff and council who have input to the survey that we put out, looking at what you saw as needs within our organization as we moved forward. So much broader consultation than we've done in the past, and really hoping to provide us with some direction as we move forward, making sure that we're serving the needs of our partners. We also are pretty excited about our citizen science program. I don't think I could stop the staff with that one if I wanted to, so they're going to keep going with that, keep looking for funds with that as well, and build more of these community environmental monitoring kits that we can loan out, working with groups that already exist to help make sure that we're maximizing other folks' opportunity to get on the landscape and help them as well. Also monitoring on and off ice conditions, really important in Orr Lake, so we can tell what kind of impacts we're seeing in terms of climate change as well. And really looking forward to continuing to work with you and your staff to ensure this area continues to be obviously the great place to work, live, and play that we all are enjoying. The other big news for us that to watch for as we move into 2018 in the next couple of months is we will be likely moving to a new building location, and moving to, as you may or may not know, we run our treasurer operations through a municipality. So at the moment, Midland is our treasurer municipality. We are in the process of changing to a new treasurer municipality, probably to start in January. So I'll leave that as a little surprise. Maybe we can announce that when it's actually a signed deal. But so a lot of change for us, and a change in terms of our location as well. So that's it for the presentation. I'd just like to thank you and take questions if you have any.
Thank you. Turn to council. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor French. I always volunteer to go first because all the other questions will be taken up and I won't have any left. So when I'm looking at your budget here, ma'am, and I see that the $7,000 that's in there for the invasive species, my recollection last year, we had this similar discussion, and after that discussion, council elected not to participate in that. Is that correct?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Hannah, yes, I understand that's correct.
So if we opted not to do that, instead of providing you with a 12.9% tax increase, we would be cutting it down to somewhere around a 6%, similar to what NVCA got half an hour ago. Is that correct?
Through you, your worship, I haven't actually done the math as you've just done, so if that's the math, that's correct.
I just make things up that may not be right.
Maybe we can go to Director Smith quickly, because I know they didn't do the comparison slide, so maybe if you could quickly give us the apples to oranges. Yeah, let's leave the 7,000 aside because it's a separate request. On their operating budget, what is the increase impact, Director Schmidt?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Hannah, the general levy increase is just under $5,000 or 0.4% increase.
Of our total budget, but year to year?
So the request, the increase that they're requesting is essentially a $5,000 increase over last year, which equates to a 0.04% increase. For us.
I think you'll find that's of our total budget. But last year, what was the request? This year, it's I'll tell you where I think I'm trying to follow Councillor Hannah's thought process, and I somewhat agree. So this year, the request for core is 43,000. And what was it last year? 38. So for the sake of argument, 5,000, so that would be a 10%, sorry? Okay, just on the operating.
It's approximately a 12.9%.
Okay, good. I think that's where we wanted to go, because when we compare it.
So back to my question is that the total increase is 12.9%. If we take off the $7,000 for the invasive species,
That 12 is strictly before the 7.
now I'm scared. I might not be able to help you as much as you'd like, ma'am.
No, it's good to get these clarified. Further questions? Councillor McConkey?
I know last year we didn't participate in the invasive species, and I thought that the reason part of it was is our staff was going to, if there was any call or something, they'd be dealing with it. But I guess I want to understand, what is the risk if we do not participate? You've sort of worked on a program, you're working in the area, you're seeing invasive species. Do you see a risk to spring water if we do not participate in this?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor McConkey. Certainly, it's one of the values we see is that because we have some time with this person we have in place who can go out and respond to folks who think they've seen an invasive species, which may or may not be one, so we can help with identification of places that they're starting to establish, where if they're in smaller numbers, we can get them removed at this point or help with removal so that they don't establish. It's a lot more cost effective to try to avoid or minimize the impact early on than wait for it to become something that like MTO is trying to deal with right now with Phragmites, where it's certainly grown to a place where it's very difficult once it's established.
Yeah, I think the conversation last year was, and it doesn't seem to advance very much, the county, because obviously we have the issue everywhere, has been discussion at the county, and from my perspective, and I'll speak to it at the time, when my turn comes, to me, it needs a broader approach rather than just a kind of a specific approach. So I think that's one of the reasons we didn't support it last year, if that helps. Further questions? CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor French. One of the concerns we had last year too is that our issue wasn't the actual removal. through the county and through our resources, we are very, very good at species identification. Through our partners, Councillor Hanna can attest to the fact that one resident thought they saw like a water-based hemlock. When we did the analysis, it was, I believe, an alderberry, or it was a different plant, but same thing is many of these plants look very similar until you actually get into looking at the plant. Where I see the value is in the removal side of it. That said, the SSCA does do a lot of trending. They actually look at it from as the mayor said, from a more holistic sense in terms of where it's going, where it's building, those things. But where the value is to us is the removal, because when it comes to the species identification, we tend to be pretty good at that ourselves with our partners. And where the value to us would be is more in the removal side.
And maybe for clarification for Councillor Hanna and the rest of us, so this 7,000 is still going towards the administrative part of it, not the actual physical out with the shovels and swords or whatever they use. Is it a continuation? Because I know that's a very good point. CEO Brindley made one of the reasons we weren't supportive of it, because it was strictly going to be kind of study and administrative rather than boots in the ground. So is it a continuation of that, just maybe for clarification?
Through your worship, no, actually, we've had boots on the ground this year. We work with local volunteers and local municipalities to help make sure that we are bringing methods that we've found in other municipalities that are working, so that people aren't wasting their time using a method that some other municipalities already found is not working. We've done 3 different types of species removal, but we certainly, we have a limited resource in terms of boots as well. I would hate for them to hear there's possibly swords involved, because I would be tasked with now allowing my staff to have swords. They'd be pretty excited. But they certainly work with local volunteer groups and local, ratepayer groups who show some interest and help organize and bring the methods forward, and yes, bring shovels and boots.
No, and I appreciate the comments on boots on the ground through all those volunteer organizations, but the $7,000 we're talking about is not those boots on the ground. It's actually the kind of coordination efforts and the administrative and study of, what we can do and how we can do it, and then you take that information to those groups and supervise it or whatever. Is that the way it works?
Through your worship, and help organize them and find the right sites to do that, where a difference can be made.
Questions, other questions? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Julie, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the work that you do. I have 3 questions. First of all, can you tell me the location of the monitoring well near Elmvale?
Through you, your worship, I believe, I haven't actually been there, I believe it's on Floss Road 10.
Do you know exactly where on Floss Road 10?
I do not. I have not been there.
We have a continuously flowing well there where people fill up. I know.
Mhm.
Okay. Second question is the SSCA involved with the issue that is going on? There's a group of people who have great concerns about the new aggregate facility on French's Hill, the expansion of it, and they're concerned about the potential impact on the water quality, comparing it to, the fight against Site 41. Is the SSEA involved in monitoring that potential risk, the risk to the aquifer?
Through your worship, to Councillor Austin, because we are not an activist-based organization, and we try to stay as neutral as possible. We do provide the data we have available when it's requested. In that particular case, we have been working for the last few years with the municipality of Tiny, looking at the approvals and the site requirements,
Okay.
and being able to provide them with any of the water quality data that we have available.
Okay. My final question or comment is to do with the $7,000 request to do with invasive species. One of the comments that I made last year was that, as I recall, all the municipalities that support SSEA were asked to contribute $7,000. But when I look at the map of all the municipalities that are in the SSEA, Springwater is a very small section, and I just thought that requesting $7,000 from us was not in proportion to the size of our section of the overall mapping of the SSEA. So I think that's one of the reasons last year why I didn't support that $7,000 contribution.
Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it my understanding that if we want to go forward with this, we have to make a motion to remove the $7,000, for example, if that was one of the options that I wanted to pursue?
That would be a separate motion. We will be dealing with the operating assessment, and then a second motion would be for the 7,000. So there's, no, that's good. Glad you got it clarified. Any other questions? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Ms. Cavey. We were talking about the 12.9% increase in the base budget from 38 to 43, so $5,000 or 12.9%. And you may have alluded to what that increase was, but can you explain why that significant increase?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, I can. As you may or may not know, Aurelia, who was a partner in the association, withdrew 2 years ago. There's a process you go through if you want to withdraw. The board, before that happened, our board, which is made up of municipal representatives, had decided in the event that a member left, that amount would be spread between the remaining members in order to ensure that the services were be maintained for the remaining members.
All right. Any other questions? I'll just have some quick comment. I certainly like the improved communication from SSEA. You have a board, right? Do you have a board?
Yes.
Or just representatives? How does it work? Do you have a board?
Through Your Worship, we do have a board made up of each municipality
Right.
has an elected official on our
Right.
board.
And so do you have a chair of that board? And
Yes, we do.
who is the chair?
Stefan Walma, the deputy mayor
Okay,
in Tiny.
good. So we know it's being kind of controlled, and you've explained kind of why a jump because of one, obviously, municipality opting out. I think over the last couple of years, we made a decision that, now that we have an MOU, everybody understands what their responsibility is. I think it's working very, very well, and I think we're going in the right direction, and there's no question, the stewardship and kind of monitoring and exercises you go through are very beneficial to that area of the township, and I think we want to continue with that. At this point, because again, I think we need a broader kind of approach to the invasive species. Personally, I won't support the 7,000, but I'm willing to kind of bite the bullet because on the operating side, it's significant because we're trying to trim costs. I will support that portion of it. I have great confidence in the leadership you're providing, and I think the important thing is, being kind of a municipality that's covered by, a conservation authority, and then an environmental association. Sometimes it's confusing, and that's why I'm glad we did, and I give credit to kind of CAO Brindley, working with your previous kind of leader to come up with that MOU, because we do know what's happening and who's doing what. So I will support the operating side of it, even though it is substantial relative to the other things that we have in the budget. But as Director Smith pointed out, overall it's kind of 0.0 something rather than a full percent. So I'll be supportive of it. So with that, any other questions? Okay. With that, I need a mover and a seconder, and this is the operating budget, the $43,634. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Allen and Austin. that the presentation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association regarding the 2018 budget request be received, that the 2018 SSEA operating budget request in the amount of $43,634 representing Springwater share be approved. All those in favor? Carried. So thank you. And we do have to deal with the other issue, and of course the resolution does say approval, so just so you know, to get it, I do need to get it on the table. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? Coughlin and Hannah. And that the Severn Sound Environmental Association request of $7,000 for contribution to the invasive species coordinator be approved and included in the 2018 budget. All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry. Okay, wait. Let's start over again. All those in favor? Opposed? Doesn't matter. The resolution failed. It was lost. Okay. So you're saying you were not supporting it either? Okay. It don't really matter. Okay, thank you for that presentation. Thank you. Okay, I invite our library to come forward. You'll kind of note that there's been a lot of money leaving the township this morning.
So this could stay.
Yes, please carry on. And of course, we are streaming this, so obviously introduce yourself for the home audience.
Thank you very much. I'm Donna Kenwell, and I'm the chair of the Springwater Township Public Library Board. And with me today is Jody Player Delgado, our CEO. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. I would like to begin by telling you that this budget received the wholehearted support of the board. Also, we have actively sought input from the community to substantiate our situation. The Springwater Township Public Library is facing increased pressures, and hence we are happy to present our budget for your approval. With our mission and our vision statements, the quotes come from our strategic plan for this term. We have focused this term on our mission and vision, along with our strategic plan, to direct and guide our library activities. We have also tried to align our strategic plan to complement that of the townships.
We have been successful in putting our plan into motion this year. Our fundraising has been stepped up for 2017 with our successful Ladies' Night Out fundraiser and our local history coloring book. We have also created a working group for the establishment of our library foundation for fundraising in the future. We have increased our sponsors and partnerships for our programs, as well as community programming. Unfortunately, we cannot completely fulfill our mission due to staffing and budgetary issues. And this year, the library has been extremely active with both scheduled programs and community events. We've included infants, children, homeschoolers, seniors, teens, adults. We've had partnerships with Georgian Bay Reads, the Midland Public Library, the County of Simcoe Immigration Partnership, Midhurst Soapbox Derby, EDHS, Springwater Fire and Emergency Services, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've had many, many more. Our programming attendance has actually increased by 27% across all of our branches. And we've had new initiatives such as our Heritage Fair and Wine and Cheese reception, our Ladies Night Out fundraiser, which was very, very successful, Harry Potter World, we've had local authors events, we've also had increased community presence in the schools, and you've seen our booth at the Yonville Fall Fair. So all of these activities occurred within the constraints of our budget and staffing issues. And what we've done this year, we started last year, but this year we were fully able to put it into place, is more increased tracking measures so we could get a better sense at how we were doing and also where we could increase our efficiencies. So we have noticed that Springwater residents still like to read. In many libraries, circulation has flatlined or is going down. But for us, as of October 31st, 2017, we are actually ahead of where we were last year at this time by 4%. Our program attendance, I've already mentioned, is up 27%. We've had 446 programs this year. We actually did have more programs planned, but due to the many ice storms in January and February, some of our evening programs were canceled just due to safety issues. It wasn't safe for people to be on the roads to come. And our computer has stayed the same. We still had almost 8,000 people on our computers as of October 31st, and a large part of that is due to the lack of high-speed internet access throughout many parts of our township. And then we do have a lot more residents making use of our services. The number of residents holding cards has greatly increased, 12%, and you can see that we now have 6,255 active card holders. If our card holders are not being active, they do get purged from the system every 2 years. So we can keep everything fresh and know that people that have cards are actively using them. And many children do not have their own cards. The parents prefer to have them use theirs so they can have better tracking of what's actually going in and out. So more people are making use than is shown by that number of 6,255. We've had almost 72,000 people come through the doors as of October 31st. So that is a massive amount of people walking into the doors, making use of our services, whether it's books, the databases, computers, programs, our meeting rooms. And unfortunately, we were unable to actually physically purchase or hold all of the books and DVDs that our patrons request. And we are lucky enough to be part of the Interlibrary Loan Network for Southern Ontario Library Services. And that's seen a 13% increase in titles, both ones that our patrons are requesting and that are being requested from us. But of course, that does mean our staff has to spend more time on finding the books and processing them. We also provide valuable service to the township as well as the community. It happens at all three branches, although the Yonville branch does bear the brunt of this due to the location of our township geography. We process fire permits, dog licenses, garbage tags. We are a collection point for the yoga passes, for recreation, registrations for the township. We keep we organize the donations for the food bank. That's a drop-off station there for Springwater News, for the Midhurst newspaper, Midhurst newsletter. We did registrations for the Midhurst Soapbox Derby, soccer, the cooperative preschool in Elmville. And for an example, on Maple Syrup Day, in the 5 hours we were open, we did 47 fire permits. So that was pretty much one staff member that entire day that we were open, just processing fire permits. So we do a large amount of community, both for the township and for the community itself, to help them to bring them in and to help them with what they need.
Okay. We rely heavily on our volunteer base, as you can see by the numbers and the activities that they do. It certainly helps the operation run more efficiently, and programs such as Reading Buddies, our summer reading programs, and our presence at the markets and town halls would not be possible without volunteers. So they are not paid, however, and have prior family commitments. Scheduling volunteers is often time-consuming for staff. Our teen volunteers are also dependent upon staff guidance and direction, as well as parent transportation to the library or to other events. The library is seen increasingly as a third place in the community. The Springwater Township Public Library provides an important service in this role. It's open and accessible and welcome to all. As the mayor so eloquently stated in the Springwater News, these types of third places are integral to supporting the well-being of a community. The idea of third places came from Ray Odlenberg's book, The Great Good Place. In an interview, he mentions libraries as one of the most important third places in society today, along with churches, YMCAs, and coffee houses. Springwater Public Library has many active patrons who regularly visit, especially youth and seniors. The majority of our programs are free, as is mandated by the Ontario Public Library Act. Due to budgets, some of our premier programs have started to charge a minimal fee for participation on a cost recovery basis. However, this does provide barriers to access for some participants, unfortunately. Also, due to space constraints, we have had to introduce a more rigorous registration due to the length of waiting lists. We also want to know what programs and services our community wants. For example, one of the things that we have done is cut back on the number of adult movie sessions per month in the Elmvale branch because it wasn't requested by the patrons. In the past, our surveys have been limited primarily to our users. It's great for us, but not so great to find out what the rest of Springwater wants. We actively pursued outreach opportunities to engage citizens who might not necessarily be library users. We surveyed residents at both Midhurst Autumn Fest and through our booth at the Elmvale Fall Fair, as well as at the Elmvale Book Sale, at our branches, and online. The majority of residents wanted more open hours, especially on Mondays, and increased evening access. Minnesing residents were especially desirous of increased hours in both morning and evening, as they have very limited access currently. 129 of the respondents to our survey answered the question regarding their willingness to pay for the increased service and hours at the library. Only 4 of 135 respondents were not willing to allocate additional tax funds. 76.3% of the respondents were willing to pay at least $10 or more, and 35 respondents were willing to pay more than $30. This base budget request, which is to return us to minimum levels of standards of staffing and deal with inflationary pressures upon us, is a $12.14 increase for the average home assessed at $422,584. The additional program change request is merely a reflection of our growing community's expectations.
And also, for the several years, the township has done the monopoly money exercise in this year it was done at both the Anton Mills Town Hall, Midhurst Autumn Fest, and the Elmvale Fall Fair, and where residents are given the opportunity to show where they would like their tax money to go. For the second year in a row, Springwater residents selected the library as an important service to our community and ranked it third, so just behind fire and roads. The library has been working on a very streamlined budget over the past few years, and the population has increased, and the new residents relocating from larger centers bring with them increased expectations regarding the hours of availability and the services provided. The 27% increase in attendance alone, programming attendance, plus over 72,000 people through our doors, has resulted in more face-to-face staff time and increased waits, so lesser customer service. The increase in interlibrary loan requests require more staffing, and we're also at risk of not meeting the service standards mandated regarding timeliness and processing. If we fall below the standards, then we can be suspended from the service. New Ontario Public Library guidelines have been released this month, and while there are no drastic changes with those, there continues to be an emphasis on providing minimum level of standards and access. The services the library provides are currently unsustainable at these levels without additional staff.
In this term, we have had a largely static budget. We have maintained high levels of service, although our staff is at the breaking point. This year does represent a large increase in our base budget in order to deal with increased costs such as hydro and the staff compensation approved in July, as well as maintaining current service levels. Can't have a 27% increase this year. It's been about a 41% increase since the beginning of this term without increasing hours or staff. We have also requested the program change in response to the requests from the survey. A large part of the budget increase is dictated by outside circumstances due to staff wage compensation from early in the year. The increased benefits, WSIB, EI payments, and the increased utility costs, including the commercial water service in Elmville. Though we have problems with the urinal at the Elmville branch doesn't flush, so we're saving water that way, but we have the increased maintenance costs. We are asking for part-time staff and increased hours. Over this term of council, we have had two significant improvements to staffing. One was a direct reaction to council's comment about our flatline hierarchy, which resulted in the changing to have two full-time staff members, one for programming and one for technical services. The second was due to the revision of at least a decade-old job description for the CEO. Absorbing these costs meant that we were unable to fully replace retirees. Because of the additional benefits cost to having full-time staff, we actually, with retirements, reduced staffing by 4 hours, and we've never fully gained that back. We have made efficiencies in programming, as I mentioned about the adult movies, job training and cross-training, and interlibrary loan service, but we are unable to keep up with the day-to-day service requests from our patrons without losing our valued customer service and information provisions. Our request for increased open hours is due to multiple comments from our community members. One activity that we did just recently undertake was a reciprocal agreement with Essa Township Public Library, because we saw that with the new Nottawasaga Pines Angus branch being open over 50 hours per week, a benefit particularly to the Grenville area residents. We have another reciprocal agreement that is pending because we see it as being a net demand on us as opposed to a benefit. And if we can't adequately service our own population, we don't need to take on another townships.
Right. And we broke it down per spending per library card holder. So over this term of council, library patrons have increased from 4,917 cards held in 2014 to 6,255 cards in 2017. So as we've mentioned before, our library patrons has been growing. Unfortunately, the spending per card has not kept pace with this growth. So even as library costs have increased. So that means we now have a funding gap for what we're spending compared to what we're paying out. So, for example, in 2014, where we had almost 5,000 cards, there was $97.36 per card in funding. And then in 2015, that went down to $92.34 in funding. 2016, $88.45 in funding for 5,607 patron card holders. And in 2017, we are down to $81.21 in funding. Our base budget request for 2018 would put us back up to $92.80 for our funding, with an estimated 6,456 cards. With the growth in the township, the rate of cards probably will be higher than that, but that is what we're using for our projected levels. And then if we do have our program change for additional hours, that'll go up to $99.99 funding, so we will be back up to prior to our 2014 levels. And then that will also release some of the cost pressures that the library is currently experiencing and allowing us to return to minimum levels of service. For example, some of the cost pressures are, as we know, increased hydro and utility costs, and the price of books and DVDs and databases have also increased. Databases are per population, so as the population goes up, the database price goes up. Luckily for those, as part of Simcoe County, we are able to make use of the greater purchasing power, which has helped. Otherwise, we would not be able to offer these services to our patrons. And program supplies and fees and staffing, of course, are always costed. As much as we try to keep them down and make efficiencies, in some cases, when increased EI and WSIB costs come down, we have no control over this.
Okay. As a comparator, all the multi-branch libraries in Simcoe County, plus East Gwillimbury, which has a comparable population base, have at least one branch open longer than all Springwater Library branches. The only library in Simcoe County open less than Minising is Churchill, and we believe that that will change in 2018 with the opening of a new branch in Lefroy. Clearview Township remains our closest comparator, and their operating budget request for 2018 is just shy of $1 million, not including the costs of the new Stainer build. Our larger branches in Midhurst and Elmville are accessible only 37 hours per week, which leaves facilities unused for a stretch of 67 hours from Saturday afternoon to Tuesday morning. This means residents have no access to computers, youth and senior programs, information help, and general library resources at a time when most people have the leisure to visit the library.
As well, Springwater Library staff are stretched over 3 branches. So this leaves service deficits during programs and outreach especially, as well as at our busy times. More staff is needed to adequately supervise the library branches and maintain programs, especially children's programs, where it could be a safety issue. It is interesting to look at our neighboring libraries, especially with Wasaga Beach, which they have a greater staff and they only staff 1 library branch. East Gwillimbury and Essa both have 2 library branches, and Springwater, Clearview, and New Tecumseh have 3 branches open. Many of the municipalities also have provisions for additional recreation and or support services for youth and seniors. Springwater Township does not have many outside services available. Those services are available, for example, in Collingwood or Midland or in Barrie, and we're sort of stuck in the middle, and the people who don't have transportation do not have access to those services. So the library by default then becomes our supplemental service hub for the township. from the survey, we were able to receive some very complimentary things about the library. And we've been really lucky to receive this community support for us. We also make a difference in our patrons' lives and that of the community. For example, for one patron, staff have utilized their knowledge of our resources to provide large print books from all branches and also from the Simcoe County Library Cooperative for a largely homebound patron. Our volunteer technology instructor helped him, showed him how to download ebooks so he could adjust the font on his computer so he has greater access to more books because he had read quite a lot of ours. And he's now able to access a greater variety, and his wife, when she comes to pick up the print books, really enjoys the socialization at our Midhurst branch. So the library was able to open up the world for this couple and for all of our Springwater residents.
Thank you for the opportunity to present our concerns to you. We welcome your comments and questions, both on our base budget and our program change requests. We respectfully ask that you approve our total budget and not only maintain library services, but also respond to residents' requests. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. So I'll turn to council for questions. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor French. Thank you for the presentation. There was some good additional information in this, which was helpful. Do you have a slide or an analysis that breaks down the components of the 46,246? I remember in previous you talked about people, hours, for the additional request of
The 46,000?
yeah.
So you mean through you, Mayor French, for the staffing versus the benefits?
I'd like to know more detail on the components of that request, 46,000.
Yeah, I think,
Tab 11.
yeah, because it's tab 11, it simply says kind of two people. And I think, I guess, Deputy Mayor, like, okay, there's two more people.
Yeah.
How does that
More
translate into
Hours,
services?
days.
Okay. Through you, Mayor French, to Deputy Mayor Allen, that would be 28 and a half additional hours. We would definitely increase the Minising branch because they are only 18 hours and very limited. So 2 part-time people, one to help out at the Minising branch to increase the hours there, and then another one to increase hours. We would probably originally thought of increasing hours on Sundays, but then due to the response from our survey, it showed that respondents wanted more Monday hours, which was a little bit of a surprise to us. So the board would be looking at the survey to determine exactly where that other part-time person would go for the extended hours at Elmville and Midhurst branches.
Okay.
That'd be 2 part-time, with 28 and a half hours, it would be 2 part-time people, approximately like 14 hours each.
Okay, so thank you for that. Further to what we requested last year, I myself would personally like to see the hours by location, by day, as it presently exists, and what you're proposing to be increased by day, by location, to incorporate that 46,426. And I think I had requested that before your presentation, because anticipating that we'd be interested in that information.
And if you look at page 10 on the survey, our increased hours for the additional program change would be reflected by the residents' demands. So Monday opening and possibly open even later than 7 p.m. In an evening, particularly for the commuters who have difficulty getting back by 7 o'clock.
Yep.
Yeah, just a comment, we don't have this.
So that's the granularity.
Okay.
I'm not sure, we do not have this presentation.
No.
And of course, it made it easier for us in the 2 previous presenters. We had got to digest it so we could kind of maybe ask more granular questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure if
And
you
we
sent
will.
it and we didn't see it, but we're seeing this information for the first time, and it's very difficult to present to us.
I realize
to
it's a
approve
lot of information, a
significant-
lot of data to
Just your general
respond.
budget, huge increase, and then obviously the add-on. So anyway, okay, we'll carry on with the questions. Councillor McConkey?
On that point, I would like to request, Council, I don't know what the objective of today is. We were passing other budgets, but I need time because I like to read through the information. And I would like to say that it's becoming a theme where people are saying, oh, it's only $4 on per person for the tax thing. If we took that at the provincial level, you know when everyone was complaining about the Premier buying the big rubber duck? If you took that and you looked at it and you said, how much did it really cost per person? It was probably not even a half a penny. But it's the optics on the total budget. When you're doing a corporation, you have to look at the budget and you have to look at that percentage within the budget. It's not at the taxpayer's level. It does come down to that, but it's the total budget that we're managing and how we're looking at it in that percentage of that budget. So when I look at the increase, what the library is asking for the budget, it is quite high within all of the other aspects. Yes, staff is asking, our staff ourselves are asking for some operational increase in the money. But when I looked at the amount there versus the amount for the part-time, I'm trying to look at the value for my money. So when I read further, I see the value is that we are growing, and it's great you have grown, and you are saying that Centre Vespra and Grenfell would use the Minising. Any conversations I'm having with the people in those areas, you're right, like some will go to baseboard, like not to the base, but to Angus. So I'm glad you're looking at that. Others from the new Centre Vespra area, their children go to schools in the Barrie area, and so they tend to go where their children's friends are, and they want more access to the Barrie Library. So I don't know if that growth, but I know your growth numbers have gone up in Minising, because Snow Valley, definitely, they split between Midhurst and Minising. And Minising, I've never heard a bad thing about the service there. It's just, the time to get in there because it's so small. So I do want to try to digest this information and see what's fair. The fire permit, that was sort of a surprise. I'm thinking like maybe next year you want to maybe see if the firemen would like to come and be part of at the library to help assist you with the fire permits, because there could be other things that your staff could be doing that day. Another option here is I do need the breakdown because I need to understand where the costs are going. But summer student program, did you get more summer students this year? I believe you did.
Through the mayor to you, in reverse order, yes, we did get additional summer students. Part of that, I think, was attributable to the Canada 150 and all of that programming. We did have 2 students just for the summer camp, summer reading programs. In the past, we have only had 1. We don't know whether those grants will be available for next year or not. Going back to your question about service, yes, we can provide you with some breakdown of where we would most allocate the additional hours in our program change cost. And no, we will not be buying a rubber ducky or even a big size book for me to wear over to the market. But, and I can fully appreciate, because I too am a taxpayer, and, a nickel and a dime here and there accumulates over. In the past, the emergency and fire services have been at the Maple Syrup Festival. They put on a big push this year for online registration. Many of the Elmville residents, I'm only 2 kilometers out of town, don't have high speed, so don't regularly use a lot of the online services available. And traditionally, when the fire department has been there, people came in with their money for their permits and no Sparky. So we stepped in to fill that gap this year. But we have made the point with the chief that and the community outreach person that maybe in the following year we should have them back.
Follow up?
With the Library Foundation, it's just started. I'd like to know how many the number of people on that board and how many of those members are outside of the library board.
Currently, all the members are separate from the library board. It is two separate entities, and Jody has been the liaison, so to speak, between the board and the foundation. They have not yet established a mandate. It is a working group, but Jody can give you more details because I've just been hearing about the efforts. I haven't been party to them.
We currently have 5 members on our working group, and we have asked several more to join us, and I'm giving them, in the process of giving them more information. We have members from both the Midhurst and the Elmville area, so if you know of people from your area, especially South Springwater, I would be very happy to take their names and extend the invitation to them. We are just beginning, we are looking through sample memorandums of understanding, sample bylaws, in order to, we don't want to rewrite everything, that wouldn't be an efficient use of our time, but I have been in conversations with Peterborough Library and Mississippi Mills Library, who also has library foundations, and they graciously gave us copies of their bylaws so we could use that as a foundation for us going forward. So right now, we're sort of in the planning stage, and we will be actually getting down to drafting and doing the legalities of it early next year.
Sure, final question?
Prior to you coming back with this information, I was wondering if there's one other thing that, and I have to ask it, is that if you could find out if the Barrie Library would be a reciprocal and how much it would cost per person. I don't see it happening for Elmville or Minising and that, but I just need to know a number because I do have these people say to me, I'm paying the membership in Barrie because it's closer, my kids are going there because their school friends are going there. It's more that than anything else. So I just want to know what that cost is so that I have all of the information when I'm talking and making decisions.
The reciprocal arrangements that we have to date have been cost-free. I know that the out-of-residence cost is $80. Because it is residence-based, I know that some patrons have shared with me that they pretend to be a family member who lives in Barrie to avail themselves of the services there. We will be having Jody contact the new CEO of Barrie Public Library to determine if there is interest and costs of our reciprocal.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor French. Good day, ladies. You're asking for a $140,000 tax increase, is that correct?
With the,
budget increase.
yes, with both of them. Yes.
140,000, so that's roughly a little over almost 1.5% tax increase, or about 1.30, I think, on our residents' tax increase to increase the library budget by $140,000. I have to give a little bit of history here because, we've had this discussion in the past. A couple of years ago, before this council, you came forward wanting to open at 10 in the morning to have staff, at 10 o'clock in the morning to put books on the shelf. I think we approved something around $20,000 for that. Myself and another member of council who's not here anymore, both suggested it'd be better spent that money if instead of opening at 10 in the morning, you stayed open later in the day and again on weekends to make the library more available to users. The library's position at that time was it wasn't necessary to stay open later, but it was necessary to be open early to put books on the shelf. So it's refreshing to see you come here today with now agreeing to what we were trying to tell you about 3 or 4 years ago, that you need to be open later. So being open later now is going to cost the taxpayers $46,000. My question is, instead of staying open at 10, would it not make more sense not maybe to open to 12 and stay open later in the day? And I know you're going to say maybe not, but let me take you back. At one time, the Midhurst Library used to open at 1 o'clock in the day and stay open to 8 o'clock at night on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. On Fridays, they opened at 1 and stayed open till 6. On Saturdays, they opened at 10 and stayed open till 4. Minisink opened on Tuesdays at 2, closed at 8. On Thursdays, opened at 2, closed at 6, and Fridays, 10, closed to 1. So that's the way it used to be. Now it's got to be the opposite, where you're not open at nights. Now you want to get $46,000 to stay open at night. So my question to you is, would it not make more financial sense to change the hours, instead of open at 10 to maybe open at 12 and stay open at night?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, if you look at our survey, the highest number of respondents wanted us open from 10 to 1, and that is also when we have the majority of our children's programming. We have programs at 10:30 on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and those are our highest attended programs. And if we didn't have them at that time, we wouldn't be able to have them due to naps for the children in the afternoon. We have 4 programs, because we have 2 programs on Tuesdays. We have our Library Babes and our Story Time. So Library Babes in Elmville, our Story Time in Midhurst at 10:30s, Story Time in Elmville on Thursday, and our new playgroup. Our residents were not responding to our Story Time. They wanted something less structured for the little ones, and we're talking about 1 to 2-year-olds who definitely required the afternoon naps. Wish I could get one too, but they wanted less structured programs so they could meet. They tend to be new to the community, and they're using the library as a place to meet like-minded moms. And if we didn't have those at that time, we would not get those later because the children are having naps. Also, our movie for grown-ups is Wednesday at 11, and we have that so we can have the retirees and senior citizens. That program is a little bit more manageable to change, but the Story Times are 4 core programs. If we open later, we would not be able to offer those programs at all, and that is part of our core programming and our mandate to not only provide recreation and our information services, but early literacy. It is very important for all these children, especially when they're entering school in JK now at 4 years old, to have these programs and early literacy experience before they enter school.
Thank you. If I may, Mayor, I know you had 104 people in your survey. I would guess a good portion of those were probably library members. I hear from a lot of other people who are not library members, but are taxpayers. And quite frankly, some of the comments I hear is the library's become a nursery versus a library, because as you mentioned, you have preschoolers there, they have to have their naps and so on, and that you're accommodating them versus the students that go to school that really need those books because you're closing so early in the evening. Again, my pointing out to you is that if this was a business and not a tax-funded organization, I would suggest you would be closing or not opening at 10 in the morning. You'd be opening closer to noon and staying open later at night. I have really a lot of difficulty going back to what I heard 3-4 years ago from the hall board or from the library board saying that there was no need to be open at night. You needed to be open in the morning to put books on the shelf. So I get confused easy when I get misinformation. So you're going to have to convince me a little harder than saying you have to be open because kids have to go home and have their nap in the afternoon.
Through you to Councillor Hanna. In 1989, when I came to teach at Elmville District High School, the library in the town did not open until after lunch for the high school students. And I lobbied intensively for a couple of years before the library changed so that with the common lunch hour of over an hour, students could actually get to use the library at lunchtime because of the high number of bus students that we had who couldn't take advantage after hours. Additionally, and I don't mean to sound at all subversive, but our young readers, our young users, are our lifeblood, And if we get them young and train them and have them familiar with the library, then they tend to become lifelong library users. We do like to have some staff preparation time. I mean, a program doesn't just spring forward, but as you can see by the numbers of the increased volunteers, that's where we use our volunteers on the staffing, shelving of books, and on the preparation time. We're seeing that increased demand. If we had in a business a 27% increase of people through the door with the same hours and the same staff, something's at the breaking point, and that's why we have the request today.
Councillor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor French. And through you to everybody that's here today. I'm fully supportive of this initiative, as I was years prior. I think that Councillor Hanna hit it on the nail on the head. We don't have one demographic that we're servicing. This is demographics across the board. So we can't open for one pocket of one day and expect to service all people throughout the municipality. We have to be open in the mornings to service the young families and the babes. We have to be open in the afternoons to service most of the kids after school for after school programming, and then later on through the day to allow people the opportunity to come after work to exchange their. We need to be open all day. This is a service. And as I was last year, I sit here, and the way that we as a council treat this department of this municipality is entirely different than every other department. When we have a director of Coleman sitting there saying that she needs a new snowplow to plow the roads with bigger demands, we don't ask who's going to be operating it, what hours of the day they're going to be operating it. We understand that there's operational costs associated with each department. This is a department and this is a service. And we understand that. We understand that the needs are growing. The programs that have been put on by this staff are entirely engaging. It has momentum growing through the community. We constantly ask about the volunteers that are doing it. We don't ask what volunteers are working in finance and what volunteers are working in public works. Volunteers are a great component, and I think it engages the community and enhances the programming, but we need to offer the program that the residents are asking for. And yes, maybe the 140 surveyed are library users, but we received information last year of a recreation survey that went out. There was 299 people that weren't just, they were just residents throughout the municipality, and every single time we get information back, the library is at the very top of people's demands, and we're not listening. We're not hearing that information. There is an absolute cost. But again, we continue not to give any more money or not to support them financially. And then every year the gap, it's bigger. Like we talk about our funding gaps throughout all the other departments in the municipality, and we are creating a larger and larger funding gap. Last night at the Minising tree lighting ceremony, there were so many new families there. It was beautiful. They were young families, there was old families, there was a 91-year-old patron as well. So this community is growing. We can't service the existing community. And we talk about how can we, have partnerships with Barrie and ESSA. We need to provide residents what we can here. We have a library. We just want to open it. We just want to have the money available to provide programming so that the kids have somewhere to go after school, so that there's a program in it. And it's not about books. It's not about shelving books. We understand that. This is programming. Programming costs money. If we can get our kids in the community, like we are so fortunate that our communities are thriving. We have momentum and growth in all areas, and I just really think that this council needs to get behind this. We need to support this. They have given us all the information that we've asked for over and over again, and they're asking for it. It's a large increase, but it brings it back down to the basic, like the minimal. We are providing less than our competitors, our comparators. We are still, this increase, it's like the minimum maintenance standard. It's to me, I wish I could support you with more. I really do. I wish that the request is there. And lastly, as far as saying that, previous councils have heard requests, but this is a new board. This board has been there with this CAO, and these people have been there since the beginning of our term. So to suggest that this board brought forward information and old terms, that's not the way that this is happening. This board is a dynamic group of women, and they've extended invitations to members of council to attend the board meetings on numerous occasions, and they're so open and driven to making these libraries successful, because our libraries aren't just our libraries. Like Mayor French indicated, this is our third place. These are our senior centers. These are our youth centers. Our libraries are so much more than books on a shelf, and I really hope that this council doesn't let us down again this year.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
I'd like to thank Councillor Coughlin for that passionate argument with which I agree 100%. I would add to what she said by saying she emphasized a lot about the importance of the library as a community hub to young families, but and young children. But I would add that it's also important for seniors, because there are a lot of programs that are provided for adults and retirees, and there could be more added, I'm sure. As she said, we have a dynamic, creative group of staff and board members and volunteers who have so much to offer. My concern is I'm confused by a lot of the numbers that are on tab 11 in the budget binder, and I have a number of questions about them, but I'm not sure if now's the time to go through those one by one.
Please do.
If we were, I would have to ask the clerk to pull up tab 11 onto our screens.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Austin. Before you do continue, tab 10 is the libraries. Tab 11 is not library operations.
Thank you. Tab 10. Do you have it in front of you there, or are you
We
going to
do
be
not
able to?
have that.
So will I be directing questions to our financial staff or to the librarians?
Depends what the question is.
We're getting there.
Do you have it in front of you? I'm just wondering if we could provide it to provide my copy or a copy.
We have
to-
a copy
No,
of the
no,
actual
they have the
budget.
information in front of them.
We have the
You have
budget
that?
copy, so.
You have that one?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'd like to begin with a column on the far right. The third last column, the title is Change in Base Budget. And then the next one is Change in Requested Budget. And can you explain the difference between change in base budget, which totals 93,000, change in requested budget? Is that with and without additional requests?
Through you, Mayor French?
Yeah, either Julie or Jody or Director Schmidt can answer that. Maybe we'll start with Jody.
I'll start and Director Schmidt can jump in and correct all of my mistakes. The change in base budget is what we have asked with the changes in this increased staff compensation, increased benefits, the increase in our utilities and general operational increases that we need in order to continue running the library at the service levels we have this year. The change in the requested budget is in order to improve the services slightly by adding those extra 28 and a half open hours. So that would be the change in the requested budget would be that additional program change for the two staff people, one to open Minising longer and one to open the Elmville and Midhurst branches slightly more.
I don't see how you can use the word slightly if you're going from 93 to 140.
Unfortunately, opening hours does have a cost to it, so 28 and a half hours per week would have that increase of 40, whatever, it's the 46,000.
Well, I understand the increase. I just would remove the word slight.
It's still actually less than what we asked for last year.
Okay, all right.
Next question.
Right, can we go back to the top under revenues? So over in the left-hand side, under the revenues, third row down, grants and contributions. In 2015, it was 45,000. 2016, 40,000. 2017, 35,000. But that hasn't come in.
Part of that, through you, Mayor French, part of that is the public library operating grant, and it's usually fairly delayed. We
Okay.
have to fill out a September survey each year. And additionally, we had a large grant in 2015, I believe, from the Geranium Corporation. We've also had some in memoriam bequests.
Okay.
So we can't plan on
Right.
an in memoriam request landing with us.
Okay.
And through you,
Maybe to clarify that, so your anticipated 35,000 would be from kind of the government grant? Okay, so we're somewhat assured of that, is that fair to say? Okay,
yes,
Jody?
through you, Mayor French, and to both you and Councillor Austin, our provincial operating grant is usually in the around 28 to 29,000. It's been fairly static the last few years. Unfortunately, it keeps going down as in a lot of other things. Our student grants, I believe, have pretty much come in by now, but they came in October, so you would not see them in those September 2017 actuals. The student grants we get, they pay about half of our students. So we had 3 students this year, and half of their wages were paid by grants, but because they came in October, they're not reflected in this yet, but I did have the check in my hand for that. We have increased, we also get what is used to be called capacity funding grants from the ministry for technology. So that would be part of that $35,000 figure for grants. It actually went up slightly this year in 2015, 2016, and I believe 2014, it was a 3-year grant. They changed it for 2017, and it went slightly up. We do not, because it's only a 1-year grant this time, instead of the 3-year, which we used to be able to count on, we cannot determine if it'll be available for us next year. Cross your fingers, it'll go up, because it did go up about $500 this year. But I have to wait and find out what we can from the ministry on that one.
Carry on, Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Still under revenues, first line, user fees, charges, that row. In 2015, the user fees charges brought in a revenue of $45,000, but the approved budget in 2017 was $29,000. Why the significant difference between 2015 and 2017?
Through you, Mayor French, to Councillor Austin, I honestly don't know why that figure would be higher. Our user fees are made up of our membership fees from, for example, Oro Madani, our late fees.
Tiny.
Isn't Tiny separate on there? Oh, no, Tiny would be on there. So Tiny Township, the memberships from Tiny Township, and our late fees are, under that would also be included our printing charges, faxing charges, our business services that we provide. I wasn't here in 2015, so I'm sorry, I don't know why that one would be higher. I know we have had increased fees this year from people just coming in, making more use of our printing and faxing services, for example, but I'm sorry, I would have to go back and check with the staff and see what they have unless Dr. Schmidt, but I don't know if we, yeah. No.
Additionally, if we contract with somebody like St. John's Ambulance for the babysitting or first aid programs, There's an upfront user fee for that outside agency. It comes in and then it directly goes out, so it's revenue neutral.
Okay, next.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I just want to double check with Director Smith if he has anything to add to it. But I guess if you look at the, I guess on the positive side, if you look at year-to-date for 9 months, they're at 30,000 where the year's budget was 30,000. So I assume they're going to exceed the revenue side of it. But then I want to pick up on Donna's comment. When I do look at 2015 with these extra things, there doesn't seem to be any money going out though in contractual to kind of offset that extra revenue. So I'm not, about $5,000, but I'm not sure. But Director Smith, do you have anything to add?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'd have to circle back with the information for 2015. I don't have that in front of me at this stage.
Okay,
And
carry
it's-
on.
Similarly, with rental revenue, back in 2015, it was at 4,300. It's down to 3,200. In 2017, why the drop? It's 1,100, that's a significant number. Well, percentage-wise.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Austin. Part of it is we did have a service club that regularly met that isn't. And additionally, we have a relationship with recreation so that they do take a fair amount of our time and space that prevents, I guess, an outside rental from using.
Okay. And finally, I guess all the big changes between, and expenses come down to increased staffing and increased hours, is that correct? In all the increases in expenses?
Basically, once the infrastructure is there with the buildings, then yes, costs, staffing costs are about 80% of the rest, and then, you have additional programming expenses and training expenses.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor McConkey?
Sorry, I just, one thing I wanted to say is that I know Councillor Coughlin delivered a passionate speech, but I do want to say I do question every department. I think most staff would say I'm a pain in the butt, but anyways, and I do have to question this because when I look at the last 2 years, and this is what I'd like to understand. I know that you gave a percentage, and it's great that it's rising. Do you know what that equates to in patrons? How much you said a percentage, and I was just wondering how many patrons in the last 2 years you have increased, because I'm going to give you some numbers that I have from the last 2 years. So I just wanted to know.
We do have the increased number in our card holders.
Yes.
And that is a net increase. We have just recently started tracking with our door opener counts. We didn't have that number of bodies through the doors in previous years. It was staff armed with clickers during the week that we had to account for our operating grants with the Ministry of Culture. So we don't have those numbers, but we certainly have the membership numbers. And as
That's
Jody,
what I want, yeah.
as Jody pointed out, the card holders, there's a bit of fuzziness there because in a family, you could have a mix of individuals each having their own card, or a family
Okay.
having one card.
Yeah.
So it
could be
means more
inflated.
users. And we do keep that list current.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't used the library in 2 years, you don't count as being a card holder, so we don't have those phantom users.
What slide was it? I know you had also a number of kind of visitors?
Oh.
What slide is it? And we can just bring it up. And
That,
I just
through
wanted
you,
the
Mr. Mayor,
increase in cards.
the increase in cards,
I
it was near
think,
the beginning. It was,
I know, I
slide
think
6.
we have the card, I think, holders in, or members in the budget holder, but then the visitors, yeah, is this,
Yeah. So
Okay.
slide 6, we had, as of this time last year, October 31st last year, we had 5,607 cards. As
Right.
of, for all of 2014, for example, we had 4,917 cards. This year, as of October 31st, we've had 6,255 cards.
Okay, good. And like you say, so if we take, that's a difference of about 1,000 from your one thing. So if we take that and we sort of think, okay, there could be a family of 3, or there might not be, it could equate to, say, 700 or 800.
Yeah.
But why I have a concern in my area, and I know you're saying that, you know, the Minising has to open for it. I'm not sure if it's the Minising. I actually think it's Midhurst where my residents go, and/or Barrie. Because of the small, you know, if they live in Snow Valley, definitely it's Minising, because they've grown those roots there if their children are
Yeah.
going to school there. But now the children have to, because Minising's full, they're going over to Midhurst now. So, and I just want to give you some stats. In the development, in the last 2 years, the new development, Ward 1's had 43 new homes. Ward 2 has had 22, Ward 3, 52, Ward 4 has had 402, and Ward 5, 3. So as a council, we have to start to respect that growth, and a lot of that growth is from Center Vespra. So we really do have to target and get out to Center Vespra and understand and communicate what's going on there. And so the hours I will be looking at, and that's why I asked about the Barrie, like, we have to be able to talk intelligently as to what the cost is if we did get them a Barrie membership, or we did something there where they can do, but we know that there's going to be an increase to Midhurst or something. And do we want to, I think you do want to attract the business more to Midhurst than you would to Minising, because Minising's not going to grow as a library. It hasn't got the growth capacity, where Midhurst is a little bit bigger. And I don't know, like, it's just something you have to think about as a library board. But Ward 4 is 402, and it's not going to stop. I am the ward that is going to develop with the Midhurst secondary plan first. So we have to really think this out, and we know that long-term there's a library, you know, a whole multi-recreation plan, so we have to watch where we're going with this. But that's why I ask the questions that I am, because I've got all of these new residents and I have to speak to them. But thank you, you know, and I do see it's increasing, so that's good, because the volume in that area is increasing. So if there's any other
We do
comment.
have a board member from Minising who regularly uses the Midhurst branch because of the hours of lack of at Minising. So,
Talking Minising, I'm talking Center Vespra. That's the growth area right now. You know, it's sort of, it's always been the same, sort of in the Snow Valley where they're building. It's always, you know, so many homes, but we're going gangbusters in Center Vespra.
Mr.
okay, do you have a question? Because I was just going to follow up on something Councillor McConkey said earlier. I'll take more questions, but, you know, I just have to make my comment. I'd love to say, you know, I love the passionate kind of speech and support of the library, and certainly, generally, I'm in support of it. But same as all budgets, you know, I have to feel real comfortable, and I still don't feel comfortable personally. Same as I said earlier today. I said I did not support the NVCA budget as my board had on, because I didn't get really compelling, comfortable arguments. And if I had to vote right now, I'd have very difficult times. Well, first of all, I have a difficult time supporting a 25% increase, and I have a bigger problem supporting a 40% increase, because I don't feel I have the compelling information. Lots of interesting information, but they would suggest we should be looking at a 5 or 10% increase overall. And I know we're probably not meeting the needs. 130 out of 18,000 people isn't a compelling argument, and I got to attend some of the budget sampling exercises, and I think there was a little biased in a number of areas, not just library, recreation, fire, because I've seen people take their $100 and stuff it all in one area, and then I remind them, well, I'm not sure how we're going to service that because we're not able to get the fire truck there when the library catches on fire. But so I'm just saying that's my position, but I'm only one vote. I just wonder, would it be better? Because unfortunately, we didn't have this presentation of yours. And I think it perked some questions, and what Councilor McConkey said, I'd feel more comfortable if we did kind of defer this to our next meeting and deal with it right at the top of it. But that's just a suggestion. First of all, go, because I think there's more questions from Councilor Austin.
If it's any relief to you, Councillor Ritchie was the elected official on duty at the fall fair when I was next door at the library booth, and he wouldn't let me put my money in. So we didn't totally skew the results, but I mean, that was one of the reasons why we definitely were at Midhurst and at the fair, to capture those people who wouldn't ordinarily come through the doors of the library.
No, that's fine. But I guess even out of the 7,000 cards, 130 isn't a high representation. Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Two final points. I keep coming back to what Councillor Coughlin referred to, is that by not providing the library with the money that it needs, we have continued to grow the gap in funding over the years. And we can talk about 25% increase this year, or 40% increase this year, but we have to think in terms of the overall, the last decade or so. We have developed a gap, and we need to catch up to it. The last point that I want to talk about is that in 2010 we had an economic development study, and we are trying to implement and doing a good job of implementing some of those things. We also had, the township also had a cultural study, cultural plan study, and to my knowledge there have been no initiatives along that line. If anywhere in the township we can start implementing or begin programming in terms of cultural activities until we can get our new recreation center when the Midhurst secondary plan unfolds. In the meantime, I see the library hub as a place where we can start to do something that contributes to the cultural aspects of our township. So, and I see this request as being one of those, one way to resolve that.
And again, through you to Councillor Austin, that's one of the reasons why we had the Heritage Fair this year, and why we have the scanner that we're digitizing our local history collection. We've also had singers as well as not just singers, musical acts as well as authors, and we've even had a foreign cooking class to provide those cultural entities, and would love to do more. And we took our stats from this term in council because this is what we have been dealing with, and to just reflect that incrementally, it's a little bit at a time, but it now has reached the point where I'm quite concerned about the health and well-being of our staff. I notice a change.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take final comments from Coughlin and Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor French, and I guess this is through you and I guess to you. So moving forward, aside from the 2018 budget process, how do you want the library board to gather information? And how many, like we had a survey for 299 people 2 years ago, now one for 140, online, in person, outside of the library, through the community. How else are we to gather the information to show you what residents are asking, or to show the council what residents are asking? how do we get that information, and what information are we looking for?
Well, I don't think I'm the one to answer all the questions like that, but I guess the more information we have, the better decisions we make. And, you know, and we do get periodic reports from the library, that's helpful. But at the same time, I mean, I can tell them what information I want, but I don't speak on behalf of council. And I'm sure every one of us probably have some specific information. Mine's very simple. What are they doing? How many hours are they working? How many people are coming in those hours? And if we have no one come in for 2 hours on a regular basis, it's probably not a good idea to have some. I mean, those kind of information. Yeah, I would like a lot more detail, but that's me. So don't worry about what I want. I'll kind of project those informations to get the information I want. I think Councillor, so I'm not going to, are you going to, okay.
I think I made it clear what I was looking for and the point I made earlier, so I won't repeat all of what I said, but I'm looking for that information.
And thank you for that, and I think that's been communicated. My concern is when we as a council hear information that's being brought forward to us, in order for us to take it seriously or to acknowledge it, 299 on an online survey is not valid. 140 on an online survey isn't valid. So my question is, what are we looking for?
Okay, yeah, you're making, first of all, you're making statements that, I never said that. I said 130 is not a big sample. I didn't say it was not valid.
Okay.
Please don't make statements that are not what people have said in this
That's what I was
chamber.
asked for clarification.
Okay,
as
so
concerned.
it's very clear. And also, I'm speaking on my own behalf, and no one said it wasn't valid. I just said it was a small sample. That's all I said.
And skewed.
Well, yes, I said skewed for the ones that were doing, yes, I did. And that's because we have a fun time at those kind of budget prep. But again, it's like Olympic scoring. Take out the highs and lows and it all works out. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. And just further to that, I think if we asked people to write checks and put them into the different things, you'd get a different response than you would using monopoly money. Yeah. I just have to respond to the questions about the funding shortfall. 7 years plus on council, and I don't believe that this council or the previous council is responsible for any funding shortfalls in the library. If you go back to what I mentioned about $20-some thousand to increase the hours to 10 o'clock in the morning so books could be put on the shelf, that wasn't a shortfall. Then we paid an extra $24,000 for CAO starting salary over the retiring person that was in charge of the libraries. That's another $24,000. Last time he came before council, I think it was $20,000 or in that area to go from part-time, full-time, so part-time employees could get benefits. So again, you add that all up, that's 20, 40, 60, $64,000, I think, that we put forward for those things. So I would suggest that if there's a fault with shortfalls in funding, maybe it's not council, maybe it's the way the library board operates. Just an observation. And I do hear from residents, and not everybody out of the close to 20,000 people we now have in this township are supportive of the library. They don't see the library as we used to see it with books. They see the library as should be something that's more technology. It's just something to keep in mind for future. And one last question I have is, if the council agrees to the extra hours, they need staffing for that, would it be possible to contract those extra hours out to people so we don't have to pay them the benefits that you're paying part-time, full-time now?
Would you like to answer that question?
Through you. Yes, I did make note in the presentation that we specifically had the increases to move from part-time to full-time because there is a drastic increase in the employment standards demands on full-time staff versus part-time staff. And yes, we did have a substantial increase with the reworking of an old job description. And I believe that we provided all those comparators for CEO compensation. And we're still about 22 out of 29 comparator libraries. So I don't believe that the board is at fault for not accurately monitoring the expenditures. There are increased demands, and a dusty little librarian with her hair in a bun quietly shelving books is not the reality of libraries today. And we have had those increasing demands. And yes, we recognize that some residents don't believe in the existence of libraries. I personally don't use the arena. I'm not a hockey player. I'm not a baseball player, but I see the value of that. And I would hope that the majority of the residents would see that there is a value to the library and to maintaining it, and definitely the board and the staff that we have are exemplary. And we've just reached the point with, in this year alone, a 27% increase with no extra hours or staff to handle that. Something's got to give.
Thank you. I just wanted, in response to that, I want to make clear that I'm not taking any ownership for any alleged shortfalls in the library funding. Because as I mentioned, the funding that we've supported in the past years while I've been on council. So the suggestion that there's a shortfall and we need to catch up and we haven't done what we should have done, I'm not want to take any ownership for that. I'm making it clear that I think we have been very responsible, but we also have other financial pressures in the township other than just the library. So I want you to understand that. Thank you.
Joe, did you want to respond?
Yes, I also wanted to address just your comment about the contract hours, if we do get extended hours. And that is a very interesting suggestion, although I would have to double check with our our manager of human resources right now, because I believe the bill going through, that is about to, I don't even know if it's been passed, but the new employment standards bill where it's raising the minimum wage and everything, I believe it had a provision in there where temp workers, contract workers were required now to be paid benefits the same. So although that's a very interesting suggestion due to that bill that is in passage, I don't think it would work.
Okay, final, and then I'm going to make some suggestions.
I just want to say I have seen the improvement from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you know, like it has been every year, it's ramping up. So I can see that there is a need, it's just how much need. And that's where, you know, with the information that you're going to provide to Deputy Allen, and then the information I've provided to you, it'll be more information that we can make. And I do want to say that and I've asked my staff of this before, and this is where we lack as a council. You come to us this year and you say this, and, you know, I've got now the stats of the growth. But you know, we're growing, and we do our capital budget very well. For 6 years, we project our growth, but none of us take the time to project our growth operationally. So this sometimes comes as a shell shock, where it shouldn't, but we never see any 6-year projection on operational costs. And I've been asking for that since I've been in this term. And I still like to see it, but I don't put that request on you because it hasn't come from our staff. But it really helps me to understand, like, you know, we're getting this equipment, and again, as Councillor Hanna would say, it also puts operational costs on us too. So you sort of need the bigger picture. So when I see the population growth, I see the capital, it gives me the bigger picture. So keep up the good work, and we have to sort of understand where we're going to go. Thank you.
Okay, I have some suggestions here. We can deal with this 3 different ways. If someone wants to defer it, we table a motion and we defer it until Wednesday to give people time to read in case there is questions that haven't been asked. That's one option. The next option is someone to move to separate the two, because right now it's an all-encompassing motion with the kind of the increase plus the program changes. So someone would have to move to separate them. And or the way it's worded right now, if we didn't defer it, we'd vote on it with the increase, both increases. Okay. Councillor
I would move to
McConkey.
defer.
Okay, is there a seconder? Sorry? Clerk has to pipe in here. Yeah.
Because we are having one continuous meeting, we wouldn't need to defer this item. We would just need, the plan was to recess at this point. So if somebody tabled a motion to recess, this information would automatically continue at our next scheduled time.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm sure they'll come back with that, yeah.
Well, that's the question. If we're establishing a time frame to revisit this, we have to have a commitment as to when we're going to get the information, have sufficient time to review it in advance of that. So I guess we need to ask, when can we get the information, and then establish a date that we're going to review this again in this form.
Good point. So, we have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, and we have a meeting scheduled for next week. For the questions that have been asked and additional information, and now that first of all, I'd like to have a copy of this presentation, so it might perk some more questions, so we get those questions for it. So when would you feel comfortable coming back here to address any questions? Jody?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could I just clarify the information you would like? You would like to know for the program change what our projected hours are for that. You would like a better breakdown of the people coming, our staffing, people working, and when they're coming in. And is that primarily the information you need, plus the copy of the presentation, obviously? On the Barry. I cannot guarantee when I will get a response from Barry, but I will be calling CEO Mark as soon as I leave this room.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
So as part of I'd like to see the buildup of the 46,000. And that would, I presume, involve increased hours at these locations, at these days, with this number of people, and a comparison of how that exists compared to today.
Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen, the board did look at a couple of scenarios, and it was a very conscious decision not to include that in our presentation, which I assumed that you had been given earlier today, because I can fully appreciate the desire of council to know that the dollars are being well spent, but then it also verges on the fact that although we are a department, we're an arm's length department, and how much into the weeds council gets us saying, well, is Minising open this number of hours or Midhurst that number of hours? That is a board purview, but we will definitely provide you with the scenarios that the board did come up with for the program change.
Follow-up, Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Ms. Kenwell, and I respect your answer, and I respect the running of the library. I'm fully aware of that, but as you recall, this is information that we felt we needed a year ago, and you went back and came back a subsequent time with that information.
Yes.
So it's pretty germane to the decision we're trying to make up here. So I would have hoped that might have been used as probably good information for us to have, as well as this presentation, or as part of it for this presentation.
And we will get you that information, because
Yeah,
I have it in my purse.
and I think we totally understand, how the board operates separately. The library, is a separate universe, and we fund it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're the ones that go and tell the taxpayer it may represent 25 or 40% of your increase. So and we're the ones that are going to be asked the questions, not the library board. What hours?
We do.
Oh, no, you do directly for those interested, but the general taxpayer that may not use that facility may ask us the question. And if we can, and it doesn't do very much for us if we say, well, the library works under a separate statute, and they have their own board, and they just come and ask for money, and we give it to them. That doesn't go down well with most taxpayers, so that's all I'm saying. So anyway, if you could bring that
In the grocery
information.
store and the coffee shop, I
Okay,
get
yeah.
those questions.
So back to you, when would you feel comfortable?
We could have,
Do you want until next week? Because this is one long meeting and there's a clerk, and we're simply recessing. So,
Wednesday or next Monday?
it's your pleasure. I mean, as I said, I thought the presentation was in your hands this morning.
Okay.
And it will be fairly easy for us to pull the scenarios of how possibly we could best use additional staff for the branches.
Although next Monday would give me more time to contact Barry.
The big question, though, is whether Barry would be willing to enter into a reciprocal agreement. And
that one we might have to leave hang,
in
and we
the past,
appreciate
it's
that.
taken about a year or so of negotiation, so. Yeah, it's worth an ask.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor French. I just want to be clear, our next meeting is Wednesday of this week, and if I could ask when the next one is. And the next one will be Monday. I just want to be clear of the schedule for our friends here at the counter.
So is your feeling Monday would be best for next Monday?
Yeah. Okay, you want ones?
Well, it doesn't matter to
We
me.
have most of the information already, so.
And that one's in the evening, so you get almost an extra half a day.
And there goes my dinner plans, but it's okay. It's a weigh-in as to whether I come on my birthday or when I'm supposed to have
We
dinner,
will sing
but
happy
it's
birthdays,
okay.
no problem. So will that work? Or, I mean, the next one is what, Wednesday? The next one's Wednesday of next week?
Wednesday this week, 2 days.
No, but next week we have two meetings too.
Monday evening?
Monday or,
Monday evening. Monday evening.
Okay, Monday.
Make an executive decision.
okay.
Okay, so do we need a resolution?
And that starts at 6:30. That's interesting, because that's the recreation presentation that night, isn't it?
So for process, just because it's one continuous meeting, we need to table this motion, get a mover, seconder on the table, and then somebody needs to move to lay the question to Monday evening session. So that's how we have to get
Yeah.
through this procedurally.
Yeah. So the motion is going to table it until Monday evening. That's what the motion is. Okay, Coughlin, Hannah. Okay, so the motion is, and obviously we're tabling this, that the presentation from the Springwater Public Library regarding the 2018 budget request be received, and that the 2018 library operating budget request in the amount of $599,129 be approved, and that the program change request in the amount of $46,426 be approved and included in the 2018 budget, and this will be tabled.
And so now this is a tabled motion. Now we need somebody to move a motion to lay the item aside to Monday evening session.
Okay. So just rate tabled in. Move, okay, Coughlin, McConkey. So so we have a motion to carry on.
The motion would state to lay the item to Monday evening session.
Okay. And so we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll see you Monday.
Thanks for your time, and we'll get you the info.
Councillor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Before we move to recess, I have a question about the items on the agenda and how we're being presented to council. On October 4th, I asked for the report for the reserves and reserves account to be included and incorporated as part of the 2018 budget deliberations, and that was, in fact, carried by council. We're still here, right? So I'm just curious as to when that will be coming, because I do find it important in order to make decisions to know how much is in each of the reserve accounts, which accounts we have, and what they're entitled for.
Thank you,
Dr.
Mr.
Schmidt?
Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Coghlan. A continuity schedule will be provided at Wednesday's meeting with that information.
So the component as to when we will get that information, so will it be on Wednesday that we get that, or is that, it is, okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, I need a mover to recess. Austin and Allen. All those in favor? Carry. Thank you.